Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. This is your DC Spotlight for the week of June 22nd, 2021. There are a ton of books, DC books coming out this week, 16 books. We're going to be talking about everything except for The Dreaming Waking Hours, number 11, which I hear really good things about, but I've never read a single issue. So we're not going to talk about that one. But everything else we're going to try to cover, which includes a couple of double-sized issues or extra-sized issues, plus the Wonder Woman Black and Gold anthology. So there's going to be a lot to get to. We're going to try to keep this right around 2 hours, but we'll see how it goes. I know that once Rocky and I start getting excited about these books, we tend to talk a lot, but we're going to try. There's a few I don't have that much to say about. I felt overall this was an interesting week. I kind of felt like there was nothing that like blew me away, but there was nothing that was really terrible. So it was just kind of a
meh week. Kind of a meh.
Yeah, kind of a meat and potatoes type week. So yeah, we're gonna dive into it. We're gonna start with a book that's been pretty solid since the new creative team took over. That's Wonder Woman 774, written by Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad. We get a fill-in artist or probably a guest artist this week. Andy McDonald handles it as opposed to Travis Moore. Colors are by Nick Filardi. Letters are by Pat Brousseau. And we saw last time, I think I actually made the mistake of thinking that after Wonder Woman had left Valhalla that she was actually in Themyscira and saw Themyscira in ruins, burning, what have you. Turns out it's Olympus. And so she showed up there. She finds out the Olympian gods are dead, and she finds another god there, and he's actually a Roman god, Janus, who many will recognize that name as the two-faced god, right, that has two different natures, one good, one bad. And through the course of her exploration, she finds Janus there. Like, who are you? I don't recognize you. I know all the gods of Olympus. Hey, I'm Janus. There's not actually a Greek equivalent of Janus in mythology, and so Hermes thought it would be cool to bring me over, but apparently because of some sort of prophecy or what have you that somebody was going to destroy Olympus, Janus separated his two halves. And this is the part of the story that doesn't really make that much sense to me, but I'm like, if you know that one half of you is bad and one half of you is good, why would you trust the bad half of you that says, oh, let's separate ourselves because the bad half apparently can see the future? And then, of course, the bad half goes on a rampage and kills all the gods. Like, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
You're separating the worst parts of yourself. But be that as it may, Wonder Woman then has to go to the graveyard of the gods, which I feel like this is what we heard about, right? This is what we heard about. We saw it in Dark Knight's Death Metal. It was mentioned. And then we heard after the way Dark Knight's Death Metal ended that the reason Wonder Woman wouldn't be in the main continuity is because she was going to be in the graveyard of the gods. But then when the regular Wonder Woman book started, that wasn't what we had at all. She was in Valhalla, right? And we actually got a pretty solid story. It's almost like, in a way, that was set up because it does sort of tie in to this here when she returns to Olympus and all the gods are dead. I mean, maybe it was a way to take her off the game board so that the gods could be killed, because if she was on Earth or she was in Olympus, in Themyscira, she would have known that Olympus was in trouble. She could have gone there to stop Janus. So maybe Janus is the evil side of Janus, being able to predict the future, manipulated things, sent her to Valhalla afterlife instead of sending her to Olympus or somewhere else. And so now she finally is, we see in this issue, heading to the graveyard of the gods to try to rescue the gods of Olympus. And Boston Brand apparently is still going to remain a supporting character in the book. So it's a pretty interesting story. It's, like I said, kind of where we expected Wonder Woman to be, where we were told she would be, and why she's not interacting or part of the main sort of DC continuity going forward right now. And will she be able to save them or not? One of the things I do like about the story is it really is showing how powerful Wonder Woman is. And there's been various stories over the years that have done that, some better than others. But when you think about it, and especially when you think about how long-lived she is and how strong, I mean, she's supposed to rival Superman, but personally, I never think of her as somebody as strong as Superman, right? She's a secondary, in terms of power level, she's secondary to him in my mind. And this story is kind of changing that, and I think it should, because I don't think I should. And again, that's my own preconceptions that I bring to the character. I recognize that, but she really is just as powerful as Superman, if not maybe more powerful. And so I do like that is being sort of pushed to the forefront. As far as the Andy McDonald art, I mean, Andy McDonald is a solid artist, and he can draw some really strange things at times. But I don't know that his art is suited for Wonder Woman. I mean, the art's fine. I have no particular complaints about it. Other than Wonder Woman doesn't look as feminine as I kind of prefer her to look. And again, just a personal choice, but I have no problem with any of the storytelling or the transitions from panel to panel. The line work is it's a little heavy for my taste, but overall, I thought the artwork was solid. I think where it shines the most is in the colors. I think those are done really well, and it is a really dialogue-heavy book as well. So I'll give credit to Pat Brousseau for keeping it moving, because it is there's a lot of dialogue in this book, a lot. But the best part about the art, like I said, is the Nick Filardi color. So all in all, solid. I'm still on board with Wonder Woman, still picking it up, week in, week out. I feel like Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad, it's been a consistently above average book at its worst. And at its best, we've had a few issues that were awesome. So overall, the quality of what they've done, it's definitely better than what we had previously when Mariko Tamaki was on the book, and it was wildly inconsistent. So overall, I enjoyed it. What do you think, Rocky?
Yeah, overall, it was okay. I actually thought that was, for some reason, I thought this kind of, I felt this one a little bit backwards for me. I'm having a hard time. I have a more difficult time than you appear to have with the whole I have a hard time reconciling the fact that if she died, I don't understand how. I mean, if she's dead, she's dead. But she decided to come back. Wonder Woman decided in Infinite Frontier Zero that she wasn't going to join the Quintessence, which was a good thing because Darkseid wiped out the Quintessence. I can't reconcile the first storyline with this. So she didn't die, but then I guess she did, or she didn't join the Quintessence, so that means she didn't die. But yet she did die, and she comes back, and instead of going to Olympus, where she should have gone if she died, she went to Valhalla, which was the Norse god heaven, Valhalla. But she wasn't, because this Roman god Janus switched places with her, and Janus's evil self sort of switched places with her and destroyed all the gods of Olympus, and now all the gods of Olympus are in the graveyard of the gods. I don't understand the point of Wonder Woman going to the graveyard of the gods. If the gods are dead, she doesn't have the power to resurrect them. Like, if they're dead, they're dead. If the gods are already dead. Wonder Woman doesn't have the power to resurrect gods, does she? I don't understand this. I don't understand this, and maybe there's, I don't know, maybe I just, this whole thing just seems, I don't understand the continuity here. I'm trying to make sense of it, how it fits in with Infinite Frontier. It doesn't make sense to me. If she, I don't understand, if she finds the gods of Olympus, they're dead. So how can she bring them back? Or she's going to bring them back from the graveyard to the gods to Olympus. Why? So they can live out the afterlife on Olympus? Well, they're in the graveyards of the gods. Is the graveyard of the gods that bad a place? It's called the graveyard of the gods. Isn't that where they're supposed to go? It's called the graveyard of the gods. I don't understand it. It's not adequately explained. And by the way, I've read Wonder Woman for decades, and I always struggle with her mythology. So I'll happily fall upon my sword on this one. But I found this extremely frustrating. I also thought Deadman was an idiot for not being honest with the Wonder Woman up front. He knew about the destruction of Olympus, didn't bother telling Wonder Woman, and he sort of apologized for that. I thought that was ridiculous. the art, I like the art. I actually like the rougher art. I like the rougher exterior for Wonder Woman because it reminds me more of the roughness of Wonder Woman Dead Earth by Daniel Warren Johnson. I really like that. So it kind of reminded me of that a little bit, some of that sensibility. But overall, I'm kind of curious to see how things end up. But I'm curious to know how this is going to reconcile with Infinite Frontier, because I don't get it. If everything matters, well, everything might matter, but I like to think everything's supposed to make a little bit more sense. But maybe I'm an outlier here. You seem to be able to figure it out better than I can. So,
yeah, well, I mean, there were a couple of story beats that kind of sort of explained, I think, your two biggest complaints. Yeah, she chose not to be part of the Wonder Woman chose not to be part of the quintessence and was supposed to be returned to life. But the squirrel, he even said, maybe I hear a great warrior will need a place to stay, so maybe I pull string to get her in Asgard, all to save Yggdrasil. So I think the squirrel basically intercepted Wonder Woman on her way back. She was being sent back to Olympus, is my understanding, the way I'd read it. She was being sent. She chose not to be part of the quintessence. Quintessence used their power, and we're supposed to send her back to Olympus. Ratatosk, I think that's how you pronounce the squirrel's name, pulled some strings, got her to Valhalla in order to save the Tree of Life.
Yeah. A squirrel did that. A squirrel did that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, somebody must have owed the squirrel a favor. I mean, he said maybe I pull string to get her in Asgard. Who knows who he? Yeah. I mean, maybe the squirrel has, the ear of Phantom Stranger or somebody else on the quintessence, and he got Wonder Woman sent there. So that whatever. I mean, it's fine. Yeah. I don't know. It's not important. The other thing, as far as the Graveyard of the Gods, and everybody, you're saying, dead is dead or what have you. Again, I'll point back to Death Metal, where Wonder Woman went to the Graveyard of Gods and was able to return, because here the good side of Janus even says you can't go to the Graveyard of the Gods. There's never any returning from that place. You'll never make it back. And Wonder Woman says, yes, someone told me that the last time I went there. So she's gone to the Graveyard of Gods and returned. And so I think that she believes that she can go to the Graveyard of Gods and resurrect the gods of Olympus, and save them is my thinking. Yeah. That's the way I read it anyway. I mean,
no, that's right. I just, it just seems a little bit, it seems forced to me, myself. It seems a little bit convenient, but I hear you. No, it's, I read you.
Yeah. I mean, whether or not they deserve to be resurrected or should be resurrected, I mean, that's a whole nother story. And they seem to be kind of jealous and petty at times and cause her no end of grief, especially Ares. So why wouldn't you just leave him dead? Whatever. As far as the backup story, it's that young Diana story that we've been talking about ever since the end of Future State in Wonder Woman. Written by Jordi Belair, art by Paulina Ganchot, colors by Kendall Good, letters by Becca Carey. We're starting to sound like a broken record here. It's an all ages Wonder Woman story, and it's very interesting in what it does. And the art is very cool to look at. It's very, all ages, kid friendly. But with all these crazy big ideas and complicated mythology and what have you, and I will give credit to Conrad and Cloonan for continuing to mix mythologies. First we had Norse mythology mixed with Greek, and now we've got Greek mixed with Roman. That's really cool in building on sort of the background of Wonder Woman. I do like that. But it is pretty complicated and hard to follow. But then you throw this all ages thing in here for 8 pages or 10 pages or whatever it is. It just doesn't make sense. That being said, the story itself is good. I mean, I like the story, even though it does tend to be a little bit narratively heavy as well, with the dialogue boxes, kind of like the main story is in this particular issue as well. But I do think it's worth reading, especially for younger fans of Wonder Woman. But man, as we've said before, hopefully they're going to collect this in its own kind of thing, because I like where it seems to be going. It very much seems to be life lessons for a young Diana, who's trying to find her place in the world. And despite the fact that she's a princess, and despite the fact that she has all this legacy and inheritance and expectations to live up to, she feels out of place and misunderstood, and lonely at times. And so I think there's a lot of relatability there for young readers.
Yeah.
That no matter who you are, you can at times, deal with those sort of negative emotions. And I imagine that Diana's going to overcome them in a positive way. And again, I think that's a great thing for young readers to see. But I just don't know if young readers are going to see it when it's, buried behind a main story that's very adult themed. Not to say that the main story is super violent or has sexual themes or anything. It's just very complicated and hard to follow. And I think it requires a much more discerning sort of intelligence to understand it. So to put this all ages story in the back again, I'm not sure it's the right place. Don't agree with it. So anything to add to that, Rocky?
Not much, no. I will say that I do think it's a decent enough story about a young Diana learning a lesson. She's clearly there's a nefarious force trying to manipulate her emotions as a young child, trying to get into her head and is being quite successful at it. And she's being manipulated and she doesn't realize it. And that's the point of the story. And I think it's a good one because I think, obviously young readers can probably relate to that because they don't know who to trust and they feel lonely at times. And so I think it's right. It's just jarring because I'm more vested in the other story just because we're older, and this one is more of a child's story and maybe it's got something to say, but I guess it's good story. It's just an odd pairing, but
yeah, agree. All right, up next, Superman number 32, written by Philip Kennedy Johnson. Art is by Scott Godlewski. Colors by Gabe Eltab. Letters by Dave Sharp. This is The One Who Fell Part 3, last part of this cosmic story that Kennedy Johnson's telling. What did you think?
I didn't. This is another one that I breezed over. This is one that I never really. I haven't really been behind this. This story has just been boring to me. This was just John Kent and his father going off to this other planet. And writer Philip Kennedy Johnson is trying to draw this analogy between this king on another planet. This Quarath O'Danan was a king who ruled by fear, and his son was Quarath O'Bacchus, who was he viewed his son as being weaker, but was more cerebral and was more of a scientist. And there's this creature that I guess takes over the souls of different life forms, and Superman helped Quarath O'Danan to defeat this creature early on. And over the course of this, what is this, the third or fourth issue now? This has just been dragging this story out ad nauseum to sort of in what I consider to be a semi-successful but mostly vain attempt to try to build on and establish a better relationship between John and Superman, because let's face it, Superman has missed most of Jonathan Kent's formative years. And in fact, the ending says it all here, where Superman is so proud of his son John. At the end of this, he basically says that, it's speaking to the Bendis story. It's saying, I don't know, I know that you went through so much, John, but you're just amazing. I can't believe after everything you went through during the years that you weren't part of our life, that you turned out okay, and you must have been traumatized. And I mean, he's not coming out and saying it, but he's referring to the fact of the 7 years of what John went through, which we know he was on Earth 3. And Philip Kennedy Johnson is basically saying that, it's clear that they're not going to deal with it. They're not going to deal with the trauma. They're going to breeze over it. And that John Kent is so spectacular that he was unaffected by it. He's perfect. He's perfect. He came through clean. He's perfectly fine. Nothing to see here. I had nothing worth reading about. I had no traumas from my experience. I'm just a perfect John Kent. And not only that, now I got an extra power, even though I only got half my half my genes from my father. I got an extra vision power because now I got hypervision, or some hyperviolet vision that my daddy doesn't have. So I'm even better than my dad. Of course, he might not feel that way, but they're propping him up. This feels forced to me. This feels unearned to me. This feels like, well, we're not going to take the time to naturally develop this relationship. So we're just going to force it. And that's how it feels like to me. I still I still, obviously, you can tell by my review that I have some residual feelings from us being deprived of a young super son. But but this was okay. This is not Philip Kennedy Johnson's fault. PKJ does a reasonably good job of at the end bringing this home, and at least he's trying. He's saying, look, he's acknowledging John Kent's past, and he's saying, despite that, this is still a really good kid, and his dad loves him, and he's pretty good at what he does. So for that, I'll give him props, and that's all I got to say about that. What do you feel? How do you feel about it, Jace?
Well, first of all, I sort of disagree that it's going to be glossed over. The trauma that John endured, right? Because if you read the story, it's that's what Superman thinks. That's what Clark thinks of his son, based on what happened, based on the success of their mission and saving this alien race from the shadow breed. And John does perform admirably and saves his father and eventually or engages the shadow breed in such a way that his father is able to escape being trapped inside the shadow breed shadow breed construct with billions of others who've been trapped in there ever since they've been assimilated by the shadow breed. And then together, the two of them are able to defeat the shadow breed, mostly due to John's hyper violet vision, as you mentioned. And then, based on the success of that, Clark sort of jumps to the conclusion, and maybe it's not the best characterization of Superman, but he does jump to the conclusion of and you can see why he would. I mean, he's proud of his son. He's proud after everything that John's been through. As in his own words, you came back to us. Somehow you're the same compassionate, selfless, outgoing, happy kid you were when you left. It almost feels like Kennedy Johnson's setting it up to go the other way, and something terrible is going to happen. John's going to lash out. We've seen foreshadowing that John would become in the future some kind of despot or tyrannical ruler or what have you. So I think that the jury's still out. Certainly Clark at this point believes that John didn't suffer, but that remains to be seen. What I will say is that Bendis's Superman run and Bendis's decision to age John up and whatever editor agreed to it is the gift that just keeps giving, and not in a good way. Not in a good way at all. I mean, I get it. It's Bendis, and you thought he was still had the pull and was going to bring in the sales numbers that he did previously at Marvel. I don't know why you thought that. Any of us comic fans would have told you Bendis hadn't been any good in years. Some would argue ever, but he did have a lot of people that did enjoy what he did. He did have some people that enjoyed what he did on Superman too, but that decision to age John up was just so short-sighted. We've talked about it ad nauseum, but as more time goes by, looking back on it with perspective, it baffles me even more that, John was beloved as a character. Why would you make a change like that? You wouldn't make a change to de-age or age Superman or Batman up, that to that huge amount to a different stage in their life and leave it that way indefinitely. You just wouldn't. The properties are, worth too much. Maybe that's the fact that, John Kent as Superboy, he wasn't selling a ton of lunchboxes and, pajamas and bed sheets or what have you. So whatever, we can do what we want with them. Yeah. But I just think it was so short-sighted.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and I'll talk about this more when we get to talking about Action Comics, which Philip Kennedy Johnson also wrote. This whole story feels so editorially mandated to me. And I know when I talked to Philip Kennedy Johnson when he came on the show, he talked about the fact that he did need to address this. He talked about the trauma with John and how it's something that's out there and hasn't been talked about. And so, yeah, like Rocky said, at least he's acknowledging it. At least they're dealing with it, whether they're dealing with it in a good way or a bad way or whatever, they're at least acknowledging it. And it's somewhat necessary. But here's the thing. I don't think this is, when you go to Philip Kennedy Johnson and say, hey, tell me a Superman story. I don't think he's like, oh, well, I want to tell stories about John Kent and Superman's relationship through the lens of John being gone for 7 years. That's probably way down on the list, if it's even on the list at all, of stories he actually wants to tell about Superman. So I feel bad for him, actually. I know I've been pretty harsh on him because I haven't felt like since he started on these two titles that his work has been particularly interesting. Like you said, this is kind of boring. This is a paint by the numbers Superman type story with this this father, being super proud of his son and bestowing all this kind of, I think, unearned adulation upon him. It's one mission, it's one thing he did good, and you're saying he's even better than I am, and you've been doing it for years. So it feels very much dictated by editorial of this sort of paint by the numbers Superman story, rescuing an alien species from the bad guys with all this father son adulation pasted on top of it.
Yeah.
So in terms of like impact or the story being remembered, no, it's there's nothing about this that's special or that stands out or makes me think that it's going to matter in the long run.
Well, I hope that Tom Taylor, maybe Tom Taylor will deal with some of the residual, like will deal with some of the effects that must have occurred on John. But
I mean, in my mind, the only way, the only success that can come out of a John Kent series is if at the end of it he's de-aged. It's got to be, if not the whole what Bendis did with aging him up and being stuck in the volcano, whatever. If it can't be completely erased, and just go back and say with time travel or whatever, a crisis, whatever, and say no, it didn't happen anymore. If you can't erase it, then at least go back and give us back a John at a young age so he can grow and mature and have memories of those same years that can, in his mind, sort of replace the trauma that he went through. In my mind, and I know that, the whole thing about give the fans what they want or what they need, not what they want, whatever. But in my mind, that's the only way to fix it. There's no other way to fix it other than undoing it. It is such a bad idea. And I don't know why DC is so reluctant to undo it. Philip Kennedy Johnson came on the show and he talked about how, you don't want to disrespect the previous writer and just undo everything they did. Like, I totally get it. And I agree with that for the most part. But when it's something so egregious that so clearly didn't work like this, in my mind, the only way to fix it is to fix it. You got to undo it, because otherwise John Kent ends up as this character that just we don't care about. Like, I don't care about John Kent anymore because I don't know who this John Kent is. And if you go and try to tell me, and maybe that's what Tom Taylor's going to do in his story, go read Superman, Son of Kal-El. That'll tell you who he is. But in my mind, he's still not who he should have been because of what Bendis did. It's wrong, and it needs to be fixed. And in the meantime, we're getting Superman stories that aren't very good, and that's the bottom line. So I'll be real curious. I mean, I don't even remember when is this the last Superman issue, or is there a Superman 33?
I don't know. I've not cheated and looked ahead. I haven't really been looking at the solicits, to be honest, for the. I don't know.
Yeah, because I don't know. I don't remember what month Superman's supposed to. The Superman Son of Kal-El is supposed to come out.
Well, I think so, isn't that is next month, or is it even next week?
Okay. No, it's July. You're right. So yeah, so I think this is the last story. So we're not going to get any more Phillip Kennedy Johnson. I just looked it up. We're not going to get any more Phillip Kennedy Johnson Superman. There's the title's ending. There's no more, and that's probably why on the cover is this the end of Superman. So Superman 32, last issue of this Superman series, and then next month we're going to get the Kal-El or the Son of Kal-El John Kent solo Superman title starting. So hey, I mean, Tom Taylor's a great writer. If anybody can fix what Bendis did, it would be him. But I still would argue the best way to fix it is to undo it. But we'll see. Anyway, there's a backup story here. It's written by Sean Lewis. The art is by Sammy Basri. Let me get to the credits page to tell you who else was involved. This is the Bibbo story with a bunch of the supporting characters. Ulysses Areola does the colors. Dave Sharp on letters. It's okay. Again, it sort of reminds me of the Triangle era of Superman, where we'd get a lot of storylines involving the supporting characters. So here it's Loose Cannon and Gangbuster and Bibbo and Jimmy Olsen. Steel makes a short appearance, but I think we've talked about it before, and I feel the same way about it that I did then. if you want to tell a story that has some of these supporting characters from the Superman world, then just incorporate it into the main story. Make it feel like it did back in this Triangle era, instead of giving it its own. Because to go through and read a 10-page story about these guys, they're not, the story and the characters aren't interesting enough to carry the narrative on their own. It's fun when it's intermixed with what's going on with Superman and Clark and Lois and whatnot, because it's a little break and it can make for good transitions. But this whole Tales of Metropolis thing on its own, it's not really that interesting to me. I thought the art was really solid though, and technically it's it's a well done comic in terms of pacing. And I think if you sat down and read it all together, it would be mildly enjoyable. But I don't think any of these characters are really well known or strong enough to carry this narrative on their own. I mean, Jimmy Olsen's probably the most well known, but he's barely in the story. I mean, it's mostly a Bibbo and loose cannon story, and those just aren't characters I think that are strong enough to carry a book on their own. So,
yeah, I agree. This is another one where I just shake my head. I've got absolutely no interest in this Bibbo story. Jimmy Olsen, I hate to say it, but Jimmy Olsen isn't if any character cries out to be, frankly, fundamentally changed, it's Jimmy Olsen. He needs to be, he needs to be a character that needs to be, redone, revamped. And I think that Matt Fraction, unfortunately didn't do any of that when he had the 12-issue Jimmy Olsen series. And the Tales of Metropolis here, this is an unrelated story. I don't even know what Sean Lewis was trying to do. I got nothing out of this. None of the characters are memorable. This is just a solid miss right across the board. And it was almost as if they had this on the cutting room floor or something. This was just, I don't, like say the art's fine, but what a forgettable story. I don't know. I just don't see the point of this. This is, let's just say the Son of Superman can't come soon enough. We really have to get out of this and move on.
Well, the thing was, it was an interesting idea with this, this magic, this sort of evil sorceress or whatever, trying to infiltrate Metropolis and get to people that were close to Superman and try to, influence them and eventually get to Superman through them. But again, I think that's a storyline that needs to be incorporated in the main book, and you build up to something, like you used to get back in the Triangle era. But for it to stand on its own and then eventually not go anywhere, it just, guess what? It didn't go anywhere.
Well, and also, where's Superman? I mean, I don't know how you can go have a backup. I mean, and never ever have Superman in it. I mean, they're backup characters for a reason. I mean, they can't hold their own story. They can't. So, and way too long. I mean, this was, I don't know, was it 16 pages long? I mean, just the backup here is just way too long. Like, I mean, I was just, when I read this through the first time, when is this going to end? Like what? Like it was just going on and on and on and on and on, and it was just, I shouldn't feel tired, and I haven't even got to the end of the story. But no, I'm just sorry, but these characters have to interest me, and none of them do. Just straight up, none of them do. And I
mean, most of the backups are only 8 pages, so it makes you wonder if they told Sean Lewis he had a certain number of issues to tell the story and broke it down, and then, oh wait, we're actually, the last issue of Superman is 32, so we'll stick both issues. Because if you go back, Rocky, to the scroll back the other way.
Yeah, but this is 1636. This is 14 pages.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, when you get to that page that's has a loose cannon, that page right there.
Yeah.
That page right there, that to me looks like another splash page from the final part, right? Like this would have been actually in Superman issue 33 as the title page, the splash page. And so they actually put maybe 2 of them together. Yeah, because they told Sean Lewis originally, hey, last issue of Superman is going to be 33. So you have whatever that is, 6 issues to tell your story. And then, oh, by the way, now it's only 5. And he's like, what? I already blocked it out. Already did the art. Already whatever. And so they crammed the last 2 parts together into one.
Yeah.
Pure speculation on my part. but it
Oh,
feels
no,
like
I think you're
that's what
probably
it is.
right. You're probably right. You know, they even they wanted this to end.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
All right, well, let's move on because one of our favorite writers that we just mentioned does the next book we're going to talk about. It's Checkmate #1. The art and cover are by Alex Maleev. The colors are by Dave Stewart. The letters are by Josh Reed. There's a variant cover by Matt Taylor. And the writer is Brian Michael Bendis. He's on Checkmate. Let's get more of that Leviathan story because we didn't get enough of it in the pages of Action Comics and Leviathan Rising. So now we have our own Checkmate, 1 of 6 limited series. I can't wait to hear how much you love this, Rocky. Lay it on me.
Oh man, let us count the ways of how much I love this. Good grief. Yeah, just let me get my bearings here. Okay. Yeah, well, you know, the habit Bendis has this he hasn't really done he's done the same thing that he's essentially always done. It's like he continued from where he left off. You know, once again, where Leviathan is like this powerful, great, just super like genius level operative, and you know, he's destroyed all the intelligence agencies on in the DC universe. Just to summarize. And he's stolen all the greatest intelligence operatives all over the globe, and he's formed Leviathan, and he's bought his own country. Somehow he not only stole all the best intelligence operatives from the DEO, from Task Force X, and from Shade and all these other organizations in the DC universe that we all know and love. And he's got all this money, and he bought the country of Markovia, and now he leads Markovia. He's sort of like the DC universe's Doctor Doom. I guess you could think of him that way. And instead of ruling Latveria, he now rules Markovia, and he's got this huge intelligence op network. And of course, everybody wants to take him down, and in particular, Talia al Ghul. This issue starts off showing 2 years ago where Mark Shaw. Who? Mark Shaw. The big mystery, Mark Shaw. The former Manhunter is now Leviathan. He approaches Talia Ghul, and he wants to, 2 years ago is when he approached Talia Ghul to basically this big master plan that he had, that he helped formulate this plan through the help of Sam Lane, Lois Lane's father. And the plan was to essentially utilize all the various intelligence agencies, destroy them, and then take their best operatives. And the pompousness and the arrogance of this Mark Shaw is extraordinary, and the arrogance of Bendis writing this is even more extraordinary. And you know, this is jumpy from a structural point of view. This thing jumps from the past to the present to the it's jumping all over the place, and nothing. Literally, we learn absolutely nothing that we didn't already know from the previous 2 series. We learn absolutely nothing. Damian is infiltrating. You might remember that Leviathan attacked Metropolis with all that tech. When Leviathan attacked Superman, with all those great Action Comic issues drawn by John Romita Jr., where all the people were flying around with no feet. Remember that? Yeah, of course you don't. We want to forget it. But apparently Leviathan crashed a lot of ships, and some of this tech was captured, and now Damian he's checking out some of this tech, and he runs into his mom, Talia al Ghul, and of course she's there too. Now the interesting thing here is that I thought Talia al Ghul was on the Justice League satellite, the Totality satellite, trying to save the multiverse from incursions in the space-time continuum coming out of the pages of Death Metal. But apparently, no, she's also concerned with now also stopping Leviathan. I would think that since she's so powerful now, she wouldn't worry about Leviathan, but that's a little thing called continuity, and we don't need to worry about it, right? But anyways, she's pissed off at Leviathan. Apparently, Steve Trevor, also in the present, Steve Trevor is in an old abandoned church somewhere in Metropolis. He's meeting up with the rest of Checkmate. And we got the members of the Checkmate are Manhunter, Kate Spencer Manhunter, Green Arrow, The Question, Dr. Bones, Steve Trevor, Lois Lane, and this king. We don't know who this king is. We're not really sure who he is. It's kind of a mystery, and Lois Lane is a mystery. The dialogue here is atrocious. They're talking over each other's heads. They're asking the questions that we fans have, and nobody's answering the questions. Nobody answers a question directly. Nobody does. Lois Lane, they even asked the guy that they're supposedly working for, this King guy, what's your name? He won't say. He talks in circles. And this cute little banter back and forth, like, again, another 90s version of Friends. It's absolutely horrendous. We learn nothing. I have no interest in Leviathan whatsoever. To get even more astonishingly horrible about it, we get to a point where Talia and Damien are captured by Leviathan, and the dialogue goes absolutely nowhere. There's 3 pages of dialogue, and there's nothing. And all Damien can say is, you're under arrest, Mark Shaw. Then Talia says, you're under arrest, Mark Shaw. Meanwhile, Mark Shaw is just giving a speech. And he's given the same pompous speech he's given in the 2 previous series, talking about, I'm going to save the world, and everything needs to be fixed. And I don't know what needs to be fixed. I think the world's fine. Not only that, the intelligence agencies aren't destroyed. Dr. Bones, in the pages of DC Infinite Frontier, he's reformed the DEO, so that's been reinstigated. So Leviathan failed. So the intelligence agencies are reforming anyway. So I'm not really sure what the point was. This whole thing is just a disaster. Then we get this former employee from the Daily Planet confronting Lois Lane, and Mark Shaw, Leviathan, wants to have a meeting with Lois Lane. That's another thing that Leviathan did. He had all these meetings with everybody. He met with Superman. He wants to meet with Green Arrow. He wanted to meet with he wanted to meet with everybody, to talk with them, to reason with them, to get them to join Leviathan. We've already done this. We've been here before, and it's boring, and the sales sucked. Why are we going through this again? It's obvious this is editorially driven. This thing has been a project that's been delayed for months. I think this Bendis is under contract. I think they're dumping this out on the idea that everything matters because it's the DC continuity. I think this is just an info dump. This is I'm not buying the physical copies of this. I'm reviewing this because I review this with you, and if this is like a train wreck, I can't look away. I want to see this thing smash and explode, and that's what's going to happen. I'm sorry, I'm done talking. I overtalked.
So I agree with you. I think this is a casualty of delays at DC due to the pandemic. This should have come out months ago. That's why it doesn't line up with what we see in Infinite Frontier with Dr. Bones starting to put the DEO back together. I agree with you that Bendis just can't help himself with this narrative that's supposed to be clever that goes from 2 years ago to weeks ago to now to back to weeks ago, back to now. No, just tell us the goddamn story, Bendis, first of all, right? Second of all, maybe don't tell us a story because it's a bad story in the first place. It's Bendis trying to go back to his crime noir roots or whatever, but it'll be fun to do it in the DC universe because they have all these different organizations, and I can mix in superheroes, whatever. Guess what? It doesn't work because this kind of a story wouldn't work in a universe that has a Superman, that has a Batman. They would take out Mark Shaw in like 30 seconds, and that's it. End of story. That's number one. Number two goes to what you were saying earlier, Rocky, about the hubris of Bendis to do this, right? Like, I know a lot of people are not going to, they could care less that Bendis basically takes an old supporting character from my favorite era of Superman, that Triangle era, Allie, who was basically Perry White's secretary, and turns her into a cult member for Leviathan. Oh, I've joined Leviathan, and Mark Shaw's going to join. Like, no. Why? Like, Allie was this sweet character that you related to. At one point, she was homeless, and they told this really very sort of relevant and heartbreaking story in the 90s that Dan Jurgens did about her being homeless, and she was like living in the supply closet at the Daily Planet building, and it was one of those great DC Christmas stories. And here, Bendis ruins her as a character because he can. It really bothered me, and I know like a lot of people are care less, like throwaway character, right? Like, but it really is. It could be anybody. It could be any Daily Planet employee. So why do you have to go and ruin Allie? Like, just make it be anybody. Why did you have to go and ruin this character? That's what bugged me the most about it. But you're right. I mean, we get no new information here. I don't understand why this exists. It's not any good. The whole Leviathan, the whole idea of the Leviathan and Mark Shaw taking over the Leviathan organization from Talia al Ghul and turning it into some uber super spy organization, it was flawed, and whoever approved it, you made a huge mistake. This is god awful. It's absolutely horrible, and I'm not even talking about technically. Like, I'm leaving alone the art, I'm leaving alone the dialogue and the pacing. I'm just talking about purely from the conceptual idea that this would work and be a good story. It's not. It's horrible. It is awful. And then when you add in those things that are wrong technically, with the hokey dialogue that's very stilted. Alex Maleev should never be drawing superhero characters. His stuff should never be colored.
Never.
I'm not a big fan of his rendering or his line work. It's just not my taste. But I do recognize that some people love it. But his best stuff is going to be like in a black and white book that's crime noir, that doesn't have colorful costumes and what have you. That's the kind of work that he needs to be doing. You're doing his work no favors here by coloring it, by putting him in the position where there's a Robin costume, which is a very colorful costume. Mark Shaw is wearing his old Manhunter duds for some reason here, which is a bright red costume. It looks terrible. It looks awful.
It does.
So yeah, I'm with Rocky. I won't be spending a dime on this. I'll probably read the review copy so we can review it for the DC Spotlight, but that's about it. But I would implore you, if you are planning on picking this up, please don't even read this. Just listen to us tell you how terrible it is. We'll tell you what happens. You're going to know the whole thing. You're going to know the storyline. We'll fill you in. But the last thing I want is more of this. The last thing I would want is an ongoing Checkmate. So we need to make sure the sales on this are terrible. And normally I would never do this, right? I'm not trying to take money out of people's pockets or, food out of people's mouths. But this is just so bad.
It
is just so bad. This kind of work should not be rewarded by people supporting it. This is the worst thing that DC has done. Like, this is worse than Future State. This is I shouldn't say this is as bad as the worst titles in Future State. It's just horrible.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Bendis doesn't mean for it to be, but I think he's trying to tell a story. First of all, like I said, in conception, this type of story doesn't fit in the DC universe, doesn't fit the tone with all the superheroes and what have you. That's number one. And number two, he doesn't have the space to actually tell the story that he wants to tell. That's why it feels so choppy.
Yeah. And I don't think he doesn't know the characters well enough to tell the story anyway.
Exactly.
He just
doesn't.
And he just, and it takes him forever to get to a point, to his point. And in fact, I'm going to be making, you want to talk about getting forever to, I accurately predicted what Bendis was going to do, which is a very easy thing to do. I possess no special talent. I only possess common sense and observational skills, which is surprising coming from me because I often forget things, which fortunately are around to remind me. But I actually accurately predicted the outcome of the Justice League, which we're going to be getting to later, which was a very easy thing to do, also penned by Bendis, which absolutely went nowhere and was also one of the worst of the week, in my opinion. But not as bad as this. This is by far the worst of the week. And out of 16 titles to come in dead last, that's quite an accomplishment. Congratulations, Brian Bendis.
Yeah, it's terrible. And to your point about him not knowing the characters, if he did know the characters, he wouldn't have ruined Allie like that. Yeah. She's beloved. People that are big fans of the Triangle era love Allie. For Bendis to just ruin her like that, it really bugged me. So anyway, let's move on. Detective Comics number 1038, written by Mariko Tamaki. We get Victor Bagdonovich pencils here with Victor Bagdonovich and Daniel Enriquez inks. Jordi Belair does colors. Aditya Bidikar on letters. This is still a really good title. I will say, like, normally I'm a huge fan of Bogdanovic, and that's still the case. I still love his art. He definitely, and his art is sort of similar to Dan Mora. Maybe he exaggerates a little more. Like, there's especially one panel where you see Roland Worth and Batman facing off against each other, and Worth just towers over Batman. He towers over him. It's crazy. And so there are a few problems that I have with that. The problems of scale. And there's also another scene later on, and this was where I really was like, Vic, come on, I know you can do better. Roland holds a gun to the head of somebody in the back of a car, and the gun is so huge. The barrel of the gun is as big as Hugh Vile's head. Like,
I think it's meant to be a bazooka, isn't it? Or is it a gun?
No, it's like he pulls a gun out. It's a handgun. He's holding it with one hand. It's not the bazooka he was carrying early on in the issues. It's a couple more pages after that when Hugh Vile gets in the car. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, right. Yep. One more.
Okay.
Yep. Scroll down just a little bit more, and you'll see a close up of it. Look at that gun. It is as big as Hugh Vile's head. I was just like, what gun is that where the barrel is, like, where do you even buy ammunition for that gun? So, I mean, again, I'm a big fan of Vic. I have some of his original art hanging on my wall, but that did take me out of the story when I saw that. I was like, whoa, that gun is way too big. That being said, the story continues to be a lot of fun. Bruce Wayne is sort of off the table right now, which I'm a little disappointed, because I think both of us had commented on how much we were enjoying the fact that Detective Comics had a Bruce Wayne narrative. And now that Bruce Wayne is wanted because he escaped from jail, 100% due to the fact that Roland Worth blew up the police station. But be that as it may, and whether it's a derivative or not, Bruce Wayne Fugitive obviously comes to mind. Bruce Wayne's off the table now, and it's just Batman. My opinion on Worth hasn't changed at all. He's a big bully. He's not a very smart person. And that is, and I think Rocky made this point last time. He's overcome with grief, and he must have more intelligence than this normally to have become as successful as he has. But he's so two-dimensional and tropey here, and maybe that's the point, and maybe that's why he's so easily manipulated by Hugh Vile, who, in my mind, has got to be working for Simon Saint and the Magistrate, and this is just more, hey, let's cause chaos and disorder in Gotham. Vile says as much. That he wants to cause violence and chaos, so that, and in my mind, if I hear that, I'm going to think, okay, yeah, because you want Mayor Nakano to sign up for the Magistrate, right? So it all ties into Future State. We all know how I feel about that. I'm not going to harp on that again, but overall, it's still enjoyable. It's still good, although this is probably my least favorite issue of Detective that we've had so far. But again, only because I didn't get any Bruce Wayne, and I had really been enjoying that. So it's been a little paint by the numbers. It's starting to get a little bit predictable, but narratively, technically, it's still a very good comic. The art is really good, despite the few moments of scale that kind of pulled me out of the story. But yeah, I'm still enjoying it. I think, other than Batman Urban Legends, which doesn't actually have that much Batman in it, but has an amazing Red Hood and an amazing Grifter story. Other than that, Detective Comics is actually my favorite Batman book that's coming out right now. So,
yeah.
Anything to add to that, Rocky?
Not much. I think I agree. This is very well done. I like the work with. I actually like the one-dimensionality of Roland Worth. He is overcome with grief, and as Batman even said, with he knows somebody else is in play. Roland Worth is the type of guy that you can see him coming. He can see him coming a mile away, usually with a bazooka in his hands. I thought there's some obvious corruption going on here. I think from a storytelling point of view, I think Mariko Tamaki I think some of this seems to be a little bit forced in that. Everyone knows that Gotham City is corrupt in the higher levels, but it seems astonishing that Roland Worth is stopped by Lady Clayface. Assumes the image of his daughter, Sarah Worth, who died because Lady Clayface survived a day at Arkham Asylum, and then ultimately she saw Sarah be murdered, and so she assumed the image of Sarah, and that's sort of what. When Roland confronts Batman in the cave and is getting the better on Batman, when Lady Clayface shows up in the image of his daughter, that sort of calms Roland down and he gets arrested. But then literally he's released within 24 hours. I mean, even Oracle said that Roland Worth set a record for being released. Almost as soon as he was arrested, he was released. So obviously, Mayor Nakano is, I don't know, Mayor Nakano, just one moment he comes across as maybe a little bit anti-heroic, then he comes across as corrupt, and then he comes across as doing good, and I'm trying to get a handle on Mayor Nakano. I'm not sure if he's completely corrupted or not, or to what extent the magistrate is going to ultimately exercise complete control over him. I'm assuming that's the case because we did read Future State, but clearly this is going toward Future State. And just a further reminder to readers that again, this is further evidence. In fact, all the issues that came out of Future State, to the extent that we're going to be reviewing them this week, there's further evidence that everything is moving toward Future State. Everything is moving toward Future State. I'm beginning to think that the future in Future State is in fact going to happen, because this really does seem like they were out of ideas after Dan Didio got fired, and they really are sticking with Future State, and I don't think they changed anything. We are literally headed toward what Future State is, and all the clues are there. Jace, you and I have been very blunt about it, that we've been generally enjoying DC, but it is almost unfortunate that we read Future State, in a sense that, because a lot of these stories are good. If this would be an even more exciting read, and we've said this before for Detective Comics, if we didn't know the outcome of Future State, because this is overall, it's a pretty good read. A little bit disappointed in this one, but the art's really good, and Mariko Tamaki. This is clearly her best work at DC, is her writing Batman. So overall, pretty good, and I did enjoy the art, notwithstanding the size of that gun.
Yeah, I'm still not 100% convinced that we're going to get to Future State. I feel like they're trying to make us believe that, but we may veer off at the last moment. At least I hope that's the case. As far as Nakano goes, I'm right there with you. I'm not sure. Is he in on it because he has that irrational hatred of vigilantes because of losing his partner and losing his eye, or is he just completely incompetent and over his head? I could see it going either way. There is also a backup in this issue called March of the Penguin. It's by Megan Fitzsimmons, who is a writer who I'm feeling like I need to start paying more attention to. I'm really enjoying the things that she's done recently. The art is by Carl Mostert, colors by Jordan Belair, letters by Rob Lee, and as the title indicates, March of the Penguin, this is a Penguin story, and it's great. It's basically the Penguin has somewhat become a joke, right? Like at one point, they're making fun of him, saying, you're just this has-been who runs a dive bar, basically. Like used to be public enemy number one, and now you're an afterthought, an over-glamorized dive bar owner. And the Penguin is coming to realize that, and maybe he's going to throw his support and weight behind Roland Worth to try to kind of rise back up. So I don't remember at what point, the whole Iceberg Club started, and Penguin tried to, have that that sort of front of being legitimate. But it has sort of taken some of the shine off of him as a supervillain, right? Yeah. And so I totally agree that this is necessary. Let's bring back that idea of the Penguin as this sort of sadistic threat, as opposed to just this, sort of shady, trying to work both sides of the table dive bar owner, to borrow language from the story. So yeah, I thought this was pretty good.
Yeah, I agree with you. And just a quick note that one of the I don't think it's just Penguin, but with James Tynion in Batman, putting so much focus on new characters, he's introducing a slew of new characters that are frankly very interesting, and I personally am loving it. I kind of like the break. I'm glad we're getting a break for the most part from the Riddler, the Penguin, the Joker. More, I realize the Joker has a series, but what I'm saying is that I personally like that James Tynion gave us a lot of new characters in the Batman universe. I enjoyed that, and I like the focus on the newer characters. And but while we're doing that, I like the fact that this short story sort of alludes to the fact that hey, the Penguin is you're not going to forget about me. I'm a badass, and I'm not going to be ignored. And so yeah, I mean I can see it, because obviously as we get more rogues gallery and more villains in Gotham City, there's more competition to rise to the top, and I'm sure Penguin is going to have his name in the hat to be at least in the top two, competing with the Joker.
So. Yeah, it's the argument Batman, the argument has often been made that Batman has the best rogues villains of anybody, maybe with the exception of Spider-Man, you could make an argument for. But that's what makes me so mad that constantly all we get is the Joker. Like, there's so many to choose from, and all we ever get is the Joker. It's annoying. Anyway, the Carl Mostert art, I do want to, again, mention how incredible the art is in that backup. He does a really great job. So, all right, move on to Teen Titans Academy, Part 4. The Brat Pack in X marks the spot. Written by Tim Sheridan. Steve Lieber is the artist on this. Dave Stewart colors. Rob Lee letters. Steve Lieber, his line work, I enjoy his art a lot more than I do like an Alex Maleev. But I do think that his art isn't necessarily suited for a superhero book, or at least not one as colorful and as with so many characters as this has been. We've had Rafa Sandoval doing the art, and he has a much more dynamic style, and I think his is better suited. All that being said, if you're going to have Steve Lieber come in and do an issue of Teen Titans Academy, this is the issue to have him come in, right? When it's the Brat Pack, who are these characters. A lot of people remember them from the Gotham Academy series, where they're basically they kind of fancy themselves as junior detectives. They want to be the world's greatest detectives like Batman is, and they're basically, this whole issue is they're having an investigation trying to figure out who Red X is. So it's pretty fun seeing them kind of go through and eliminate people. They jump to a lot of conclusions, and clearly they're young and inexperienced, but it is pretty fun. But at the end of the day, I'm going to say the same thing I said about this title in terms of when it had the crossover with Suicide Squad. The book is called Teen Titans Academy. So I'm ready to have that experience of reading a book where I'm getting stories and character interactions between the actual students of the school, and it feels like a school book, like Strange Academy or Deadly Class or Morning Glories or even Gotham Academy itself, right? Where it's focused on the students. And this does, but only 3 of them. And it's more focused on who Red X is. And Rocky and I talked about it before. The name of this book is Teen Titans Academy. It's not Red X. So I hope, and I'm starting to worry, because I said before, I hope this isn't like 18 issues of Red X, trying to figure out who Red X is and just beating us over the head with Red X, Red X, Red X. I don't care. Like, I'm more interested now because of what we saw in the latest issue of Suicide Squad, that I'm curious enough now to know who Red X is. But I'm reading this book to find out about the Teen Titans Academy and the characters that are going to the academy to learn how to use their powers and this next generation of heroes. I'm not reading about it to learn about Red X. So this was a fun issue, but okay, either tell us who Red X is or give it a rest and let's get on with learning about these kids that are going to the academy. So ultimately, I thought it was okay. I guess if you're a huge Red X person, you probably like it a lot. But I just thought it was okay. What were your thoughts, Rocky?
Well, my thoughts are that the one consolation here is that this is absolutely more of, this involves a search for Red X. This involves the Bat Pack, which consists of Brat Girl, Chupacabra, and Megabat. They suspect that Red X is a member of the school, and they're infiltrating and interrogating various members of Titans Academy. And it's through that interrogation and their investigation that we get to know the characters. So even though I like you, I'm tired of Red X, the Red X mystery already, and I wish it would go away. It's not going to go away. We know it's not going to go away. In fact, we got a yearbook coming out next week, Teen Titans Academy yearbook that'll come out, and that's all filled with Red X. We got that in Suicide Squad. Red X is here, I think, for a while, but at least I think this issue, I think, had a more character development with some of these students. I felt I got to know these students more than I have in previous issues through their narration, through the exposition. I thought it was good. Through their investigations, they investigate. So we got the Bratgirl, Chupacabra, and Megaback. They investigate Billy Batson, Tubi, Stitch, Matt Price, Brick Pataruso, and they explain all these characters. Miguel Montez of Dial H for Hero. We get snapshots of all these characters, and there's a great scene in here that I really like where they're spying on Billy Batson, and they see Billy Batson screaming on top of the building, and they're wondering what he's screaming, and of course we're thinking he's yelling Shazam, and he is. And what's interesting is that he yells Shazam, he gets hit with lightning, but he doesn't change into Captain Marvel. That's what's fascinating about that. Now we know that ultimately, we know what happens to Shazam and Billy Batson at the end of Future State, and we know he ultimately ends up being Shazam ends up having to guard the Rock of Eternity, the door to the Rock of Eternity, to prevent the unkindness from escaping. And in any event, we also know that at some point the Bat Pack, we know from Future State that the Bat Pack, that these three, Bratgirl, Chupacabra, and Megabat, they're kind of bullies. And we know ultimately that they're going to bully Miguel, who is of Dial H for Hero. They're going to steal his H-Style, and they're going to try to resurrect Roy Harper from the dead, thinking that he's dead, but he's not dead. And now, we haven't reviewed DC Infinite Frontier yet, but Roy Harper, so spoiler alert, we're going to review it coming up here, but all this is tied up. So we know that what these kids are going to do in their vain attempt to try to find out who Red X is, and in their bullying, we know that they're going to end up doing a lot more harm than good. And this is all tying together, but to new readers like you and I actually think this is kind of interesting at this point, but I've been here from the beginning. I think to new readers, this is a lot to sort of explain to new readers, but the story is there. I just wish it was more cohesive and just better put together. And I have to say again, I sound like a broken record, but starting off with Future State was a mistake in so many ways, because we got snapshots of the future that we didn't need, and I think take away from a lot of the surprises where this could be headed to. I don't know. I would have loved to have been the fly on the wall to hear the person who justified Future State, and again, we liked a lot of Future State, but I don't know. I don't know if it's a gift that keeps on giving. I think it's a gift that maybe has diminishing returns the more we read these ongoing narratives. But I like the art here. I thought that this was the best character development so far, and fingers crossed that it'll continue to get better.
Yeah, that's another part of the reason that I think that we won't get to Future State, because it's got to be more interesting to think we're going to go there and then go in a different direction. Because of all this. So, I mean, obviously Billy's having trouble because, the Shazam persona, has to do with everything that we saw in Future State and whatnot. And so, yeah, it's got to veer off at some point. But like I said, they're probably going to wait till the last minute.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. Infinite Frontier, number 1 of 6 is out this week. For some reason, and again, it's so annoying when they do this, there's no credits in the preview copy. And I'm guessing the credits are inside the front cover and we don't have that page. But it's written by Joshua Williamson. The art is by Xermanico. Colors are by Romulo Fajardo Jr. I don't know who the letterist is. I apologize for not being able to give them proper credit. But as far as the book itself, Rocky, what did you think?
I thought this was disappointing to me. This was disappointing. I'll straight up. I'll say it. I was really hoping for a lot more substance. I think that I don't know. I mean, this we start off with a bang. I guess we got a ship that's rocketed to Earth, and we end up with a rocket ship crash landing in a farm field and in this wreckage is Flashpoint Batman. Now, when I see Flashpoint Batman, normally I would think cool. I would think of Flashpoint. Unfortunately, we had something called Tom King's Batman run, and when I think of Flashpoint Batman, I think of I think of something very, very different, and I think of a corrupted piece of human garbage, because that's what Flashpoint Batman ended up being. He wasn't the heroic person in Flashpoint, but maybe he is now, if we can forget Tom King's Batman run, and DC probably wants us to forget that because that's why they fired Tom King. But off Batman. But in any event, so now we got Flashpoint Batman crash landing on Earth 23, which is the same Earth where Calvin Ellis, President Superman is, and President Superman is actually the leader of Justice Incarnate, which we know from Multiversity, they look after and protect the sanctity of the multiverse. And that's very, very important. Now, what's interesting is that we know from Grant Morrison's Multiversity that Justice Incarnate, they protect the sanctity of the multiverse. And meanwhile, we get, we have the Totality coming out of Death Metal, the Justice League Totality protecting, I think, the same thing. So we got different Justice Leagues trying to protect the sanctity of time. Joshua Williamson is also trying to set up the fact that everybody on every Earth is aware that there's a multiverse now. And apparently this is something that Dr. Bones he's trying to recruit Chase into the DEO. And this is where my criticism of Checkmate comes in. I mean, Leviathan was unsuccessful. The DEO was back. Dr. Bones, Mr. Bones here, he's supposed to be a member of Checkmate, but he's also forming the DEO again. So I'm not really sure why we need Checkmate if we have the DEO, or I guess we're going to have more than one intelligence agency. In any event, he's recruiting Agent Chase for back into his fold, and we don't know why. He shows her a picture of something. We know from the digital series of Infinite Frontier that we're getting snapshots of various heroes and origins in the universe. We also got a snapshot here of Alan Scott talking to his son Obsidian, and they go to the Justice Society. They go to the Justice Society headquarters in Gotham City, and it explodes. Somebody destroys it, and they're fearful that his daughter Jade might be killed. And so now where's all this leading? Well, at the end of the day, the Justice Incarnate on Earth 23, they take Flashpoint Batman and they want to question him. And there's a great conversation where Flashpoint Batman asks to speak to the Flash. And the, President Superman says, "Which Flash?" And he says, "Barry Allen." And he says, "Which one?" It's like, you got to be more specific. This is the multiverse that we protect. And so something's going on here. Meanwhile, probably the biggest reveal is that we see Barry Allen of Earth Zero, and we know Barry Allen is now the new Flash of Justice Incarnate. So Wally West is at least supposed to be the Flash of Earth Zero's Justice League, and we know that Barry Allen is now the Flash of Justice Incarnate. He's been going around and he's been checking out all the various Earths in the multiverse just to check them out, following the events of Death Metal, just to scope things out. And he discovers Earth Omega. And the way that he gets to Earth Omega is that it's very difficult to get to Earth Omega because he's got to channel all the energies of more than one Earth. And it's very interesting that in Earth Omega, there's no frequency. So each Earth has its own frequency and its own vibration, except for Earth Omega, it doesn't. And it's a strange place. And what he finds on Earth Omega is the remains of the Quintessence. We know that Darkseid in Infinite Frontier Zero, he murdered all the members of the Quintessence, which consisted of a Guardian, of a Phantom Stranger, and of, oh my God, Hera, I think. And in any event, a whole slew of them. And Fortunately, Wonder Woman refused to join the Quintessence, so she wasn't there when the massacre occurred. Flash discovers this, and Flash also runs into another individual who, those of us who love a good crisis, know that Psycho Pirate is always part of a crisis. Psycho Pirate was there, part of the original Crisis on Infinite Earths when Flash died. And when Flash was resurrected in Final Crisis, Psycho Pirate was also present. And here we have Psycho Pirate once again coming forward, and he's working for somebody. We don't know who Psycho Pirate is working for, but they want to recruit the Flash to help them. My favorite part comes at the end, and this is the part I was alluding to when we were reviewing Teen Titans Academy. We see Roy Harper having a drink in a diner where people are talking about how cool it is that they can, that there's a multiverse, and they talk about having alternate selves, and some people think that the multiverse is fake news, it's not real, and nobody understands what Superman says when he talks about the multiverse. It's average citizens in the diner talking about the multiverse, and Roy Harper happens to be present, and there's an altercation when the diner is attacked by these people that want to extract Roy Harper, and they're about to it looks like they're going to kill Roy Harper, and wow, all of a sudden there's a fist that slams into these attackers, and the big reveal here, and it is a whopper, is that Roy Harper seems to be surprised that he's wielding a Black Lantern ring. This is a huge revelation. If Roy Harper is wielding a Black Lantern ring, you got to remember that you're only, as Batman discovered, as we all know from Death Metal and from Blackest Night, you can only wield a Black Lantern ring if you are dead. So Roy Harper would appear to both be dead and alive. He's dead. He must be dead if he can wield a Black Lantern ring, unless there are other rules at play in this new Omniverse. This is really interesting. How did he become a Black Lantern? He seems to be surprised by it. It is a mystery. It's going to continue in 3 weeks. There's a lot here that, a lot of interesting things are building up here. A lot of moving pieces. My one criticism is there are so many moving pieces that coming out of Death Metal, coming out of the mess of Death Metal, I don't know if the DC Universe was maybe ready for another big event that is this messy with so many moving parts. But hey, whatever. I'll enjoy it. I'm definitely picking this up. I'm really curious to see what happens to Roy Harper, and this Black Lantern ring is so much to go through here. But anyways, Jace, man, what do you think? Was this too much adventure for you, or what?
No, I mean, here's the thing. Like, the way it's structured, it's all about this last page, like you said. The Black Lantern, Roy Harper, and it brings up the whole idea of the omniverse and multiverse and what have you. So if he's still dead in one reality, can he be a Black Lantern there? If he's, and it's not just that he shows up at the end with this Black Lantern ring, which I'm not sure. Like, at first I thought he was a White Lantern, because of what the energy looks like. I don't know why. I mean, the energy should be more black, and I know there's a little bit of black crackling around him, but the ring actually is glowing white. It should be glowing black in my mind. But the fact that there are these other, I don't know, for lack of a better term, to mix franchises here, like Force Ghost.
You're right. I stand corrected. I think that is. I got the White Lantern ring here. I think that is a White Lantern.
No, it's a Black Lantern. It's black.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
Because the white, right. Because the White Lantern ring, it kind of radiates out like a sun.
You're right.
And the black,
there's a different line on the White Lantern ring. I got them both here. You're right.
The black goes straight up and down.
Yeah.
Like we see here on the chest, as opposed to the white one where it kind of radiates out like a sun. But yeah, I'm intrigued by this, and I'm intrigued by these different iterations of Arsenal or Roy Harper that are behind him, these like Force Ghost type situations. But it's 6 issues, and I feel like we didn't get a sixth of the story here. I loved the Psycho Pirate showing up and the fact that we are going bigger. I mean, it's not only the Psycho Pirate, but he has like this Omega on his chest, which, a lot of us have come to associate that symbol in the DC universe with Darkseid. We know Darkseid is the one that killed the Quintessence. We saw that in Infinite Frontier Zero. And if you've ever seen the covers to Final Crisis, where, Darkseid's putting his fist together and there's Omega symbols on his fist. Obviously, his beams are called Omega beams. So clearly he's going to be the big bad here. And I do like that idea. I think Darkseid gets he is by far should be the Galacticus or the Thanos of the DC universe. And I don't think he gets enough credit. People don't think of him as a big enough threat. And so anything that Joshua Williamson can do to level him up, I agree with. So the problem with the story is it feels so choppy, right? Like we get Alan Scott Green Lantern and Obsidian, and then we jump to Paris with Cameron Chase, former head of DEO, with current head of DEO, Dr. Bones. He's trying to put it together, and he's sort of blackmailing her back in. We get Justice Incarnate showing up. We get Barry Allen and Flash on Earth Omega, and then we get the diner scene. But we have no context for how any of this ties together, how it ties together, why it ties together. So I'm just not sure. And these kind of events are tough to do. And the other thing is, I think because events have become so much more common, this is especially true across the street at Marvel, that they do that. It's like one event after the other, as opposed to just one event a year, big summer event, usually with a bunch of crossovers. It's just one event leads into another. So they've lost their kind of cachet and importance. And so in that way, they don't spend as much resources on them, which is fine, to not have to go out and read, 10, 12 issues and buy a bunch of crossovers. But the problem is when you shrink it down to only 6 issues, then is that enough room to really tell something if this is going to be the crisis that sort of leads to... We've heard so many different things, right? I've heard from people that saying that DC does have another crisis coming, that's probably going to be what fixes Future State. Hopefully it can be what fixes John Kent, but we know it's coming. We know there's another big event coming, and maybe it'll throw out some of the stuff in Death Metal and Dark Knight's Metal that just didn't work, or what have you. We know there's another one coming eventually. So maybe this is just set up for that. I don't know. But like I said, the problem is that so many of these events, and it's one after the other, and constantly shifting stuff, and Omniverse, and everything counts. Like, we don't know what to think anymore. And it makes stories like this, which could be pretty interesting, and we feel like, okay, maybe we should be paying attention to it. It removes some of the importance, and it removes some of the impact of them, because why should I care about this? They're just going to change it next week, or whatever, 3 weeks from now, whenever it's over, when the next event comes along. And so that's disappointing to me. And it has nothing to do with this creative team and what have you. I won't even necessarily say it has. I won't put all the blame. Let's put it that way. I won't put all the blame on DC editorial either. It's just the nature of the industry right now. And it's unfortunate. And it has to do with the shelves being crowded. It has to do with variant covers. It has to do with speculators. It's an overall problem in the industry. And I kind of sound like an old man, I'm Clint Eastwood, get off my lawn. I'm hearkening back to a simpler time, but I just feel like in a simpler time, an event like this would have had more impact. It would have had, more marketing. It would be more important. But whether or not it's going to be a good story or not, I don't know. I feel like we got glimpses of a good story and an interesting story here. I think technically it's well put together. Some of the better writing and dialogue I've seen Joshua Williamson do. It's got interesting characters. I mean, having Roy Harper show up as a Black Lantern, that was the last thing I expected in this book. I think Alan Scott, Green Lantern, or Sentinel, as he's been called sometimes, is an interesting character. Easton even showed up there for a brief moment. I'm always a fan of seeing President Superman. So yeah, I loved seeing Psycho Pirate, this new leveled up version of Psycho Pirate. So there's a lot of good parts here. Did it come together to create a cohesive issue? No. Does that mean that we won't get a cohesive story eventually? No, not necessarily. So it's kind of a wait and see for me. I'm going to be curious to hear what a lot of other people's reactions are to Infinite Frontier after it comes out this week. So yeah, I guess we'll see. And the art by Xermanico was solid. I enjoyed it. It felt dynamic when it needed to, and a lot of characters here. I mean, that guy is really he's earning his paycheck with this issue. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious. Psycho Pirate has the Omega symbol on his chest, and but that symbol has been used sometimes to protect from the anti-life equation, but sometimes it might mean that you're infused with the anti-life equation. But because he's black and white, I'm wondering if he's against Darkseid or on the mysterious voice. Is it Darkseid or is it somebody else? So
I read it as Darkseid. I read it as him working for Darkseid, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think you're right. Anyways, fun stuff.
Yep. Moving on, Action Comics number 1032, written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, art by Daniel Sampere, colors by Adriano Lucas, letters by Dave Sharp. First of all, the art, Daniel Sampere, I think I said David's. Daniel Sampere, absolutely incredible art. This guy is a superstar in the making. I said that from the first time I saw his art, and I can't believe more people aren't talking about it. Just absolutely spectacular. The line work, the character acting, transitions from panel to panel, just fantastic. Adriano Lucas, my colorist of the year 2 years ago, is the perfect person to color his art. He brings out the best of Daniel Sampere's art. So, this is the most beautiful comic of the week for me. Just absolutely fantastic. Dave Sharp's letters, again, it's not super dialogue heavy, but there's Kryptonian here. There's conversations with Batman. There's a lot. I wouldn't say it's clearly not the most dialogue heavy book, but there's a lot. And Sharp does a great job of pacing it out correctly with his placement of the word balloons, and I think that doesn't get mentioned often enough. So I wanted to give him credit. As far as the story itself, I said I would mention this before when I was talking about Superman. So this has no John Kent BS. I don't feel like there's anything being editorially dictated. This to me feels like Philip Kennedy Johnson telling the Superman story that he wants to tell. And while I'm not 100% on board with taking Superman off of Earth and putting him out on Warworld again, Future State, that's what we saw in Future State. So it's shades of Future State. And I've talked before about how that's been done before with the Superman Exile storyline by Roger Stern, which was fantastic. Why are we doing it again? But at least this feels like Philip Kennedy Johnson is getting to tell the story that he wants to tell. And you know what? It's pretty damn good. I'm really enjoying it. There's a scene with the artifact that we saw last issue that the Atlanteans claimed. And Superman said, "Hey, I'll take it back to my Fortress of Solitude to examine it." No, it's ours. Well, and I mentioned at the time, that might not be the best call. And that's exactly kind of the impetus of the action in the issue. It mutates creatures from under the sea, and it's actually a message to Superman. It's clearly a trap. Superman even recognizes that he's being drawn to Warworld to try to rescue this remnant, these Kryptonians who maybe were some Kryptonians who left thousands of years before the destruction of Krypton. But if there's Kryptonians out there and there's a chance to save them, Superman is going to take every opportunity to save them, even if he is walking into a trap. But ultimately, it ends up with Steve Trevor as a and again, this goes back to what Rocky was talking about with the Checkmate series not lining up timeline-wise. Isn't Steve Trevor, shouldn't he be out there going after Mark Shaw? There's no Argus for him to be a part of anymore, right? It all got dismantled. Oh, but wait, he's with Argus. He's there representing the U.S. government. He's telling the Atlanteans, "Hey, you got to give us that artifact." Aquaman's like, "Oh, I don't speak for Atlantis anymore, but you're not getting it. That'll be an act of war." And Superman's just kind of caught in the middle there. Ultimately, I think Superman should just fly down. And he even says, "I don't think anybody should have this artifact. It's too dangerous." He just needs to fly down to Atlantis, take it, and chuck it. Just take it with him to space or throw it in the sun or whatever. Because it's clear that it's too dangerous for anybody to have a hold of. So that's an interesting dynamic and interesting tension that's going on there. So overall, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. A lot of action. There's great character moments between Superman and Supergirl and Lois. The fact that Aquaman shows up, we get giant monsters threatening Metropolis. We get a Superman-Batman interaction. There's a lot of stuff to like here. And like I wish we had just gone into this story instead of getting that action comic story that was talking about Superman and his son John out in space trying to seal that rift, blah blah blah, and Superman's powers might be going wonky and what have you. Maybe that Superman's powers going wonky, whatever, was just foreshadowing for more of what we saw in Future State. Because when we see him fighting on War World, he doesn't have anywhere near the power level that we would expect Superman to have. So, again, more shades of Future State heading down that path. But I'm really enjoying this. If I read this and I read Superman 32 this week, and I didn't know that the same writer wrote both, I would not have guessed that the same writer wrote both, because this is good and that was not. And so again, I can't help but think that Philip Kennedy Johnson's trying to fulfill some editorial dictates or editorials asking him to address the whole John Kent situation, where this feels more like the real story that he wants to tell. So even though I'm not 100% on board with the idea of Superman going off planet, War World, heading down that path toward Future State, because I feel like it's been done before and spectacularly, at least this feels like a well put together story that he's passionate about telling, as opposed to the paint by the numbers feel of Superman number 32. So you take that kind of passion for storytelling and great action, and you add in the Daniel Sampere art, where he draws that action just amazingly with some great transitions, especially the sequence of panels where this giant monster that's attacking Metropolis freezes over a course of like 5 panels. I mean, the artwork is just fantastic. Like, I love the fact that it's raining when they're fighting. It's nighttime. The colorist Adriana Lucas getting a chance to show off with all these different energies that are glowing, and they just leap off the page. Like, yeah, this was far and away my favorite DC book this week. The main story, I'll say. Yeah. What are your thoughts about the main story, Rocky?
I tell you, there's no question that I think this is a remnant. This is a follow through on what is originally a Bendis plot. But can you imagine if Bendis scripted the dialogue for this story, how different it would read?
Oh God!
I mean, just
I don't want to imagine that.
No, I know, but it just goes to show that Bendis has good ideas. But if this was generally a Bendis plot that that Philip Kennedy Johnson is taking and running with, thank God that he's putting the dialogue to it. I really love the dialogue here. I love this new Kryptonian group of Kryptonians, these Phaelosians. I guess they're an ancient Kryptonians that were sort of a science colony that left Krypton thousands of years ago, and they're essentially caught. But they possess the symbol of Kal-El's family symbol. Mongol obviously captured them, and then there's the new Mongol. Mongol killed the son, killed the father, and so it's quite clear that Superman figures out that Mongol likely died and a new Mongol has taken his place. And just like last issue where the one person refused to give up their chains, this girl Theola, she doesn't want to give up her chains either, and she's not even. I don't think she realizes that she actually has superpowers, because obviously on War World, it's under a red sun and their powers are kept at bay or minimized. And so she probably doesn't even appreciate that she has these powers, as she discovers as Superman tries to remove her chains. Daniel Sampere, artistically, the compassion that Superman renders here, and the way Superman speaks with compassion and kindness, and Lois as well, to Theola, who is struggling and is fearful and is afraid. It's clear that Superman wants to help, and Superman does feel guilty, and Superman knows it's a trap. John Kent, his son, says, this is a trap. This is a trap. Batman tells him, it's a trap. Superman wants the Justice League to come with him to War World. Well, it's fairly obvious this is a trap. And it's a dangerous one, because if this energy source, this and it's called Genesis, it's called a Genesis mineral, is what the Atlantean scientist called it. This power source is so incredible that it can it's very dangerous, and it's very dangerous to have on Earth. The United States government wants it. Atlantis wants to keep it. Clearly, Superman probably wants to remove it himself. I'm curious to see at what point Superman's going to end up in War World at some point, and it's obvious why he's going there. He has to go there in order to give hope to all those people. It's now making sense what we saw in Future State. We saw Superman intentionally going to War World to fight in the gladiatorial arena. And why is he doing that? Superman needs to win in gladiatorial combat. He needs to inspire the people who refuse to give up their chains. This Theola and refuses to give up her chains. Imagine all of them so afraid of Mongol that they're afraid to give up their chains. Imagine the hope that you have to inspire to get them to throw their chains off. That's what Superman has to do. So he not only has to go there, how do you rescue people that are too afraid to even remove themselves from bondage? That's incredible. So I really like how this issue established the obstacle and the difficulty that Superman's going to have, because it's one thing to be Superman, but you better be really good at inspiring hope, because Mongol has a captive audience there that worship him and don't even want to remove their chains. And Superman's going to go and put himself in the middle of that. And we saw a taste of that in Future State. I agree with you 100%. This is very well set up. Philip Kennedy Johnson has taken this along with Daniel Sampere's art and told a fantastic story. The stakes are raised for Earth with the Genesis minerals. The stakes are raised for Superman and the Superman family with War World. And my God, this is very well done. Very well done. I agree with you.
Yep, I agree. The backup is The Passenger Part 4. It's the Midnighter storyline. Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad writers. Michael Avon Oeming artist. Takasomi does colors. Dave Sharp on letters. I sound like a broken record here, but Michael Avon Oeming is not the right artist for this story. He is not an artist that draws superhero stuff very well. That being said, I felt like this was the easiest to understand of the parts so far. Part 4, Part 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. You're lost if you haven't read any of the Future State stuff. And even if you've read the Future State stuff, it is a very convoluted time travel story and kind of hard to follow. This sort of started bringing it together for me a little bit, but it's still a story that if I do want to understand it, I realize I'm going to have to wait till the whole thing is out and then go back and reread all the Future State stuff and then reread this stuff and see if I can kind of put together what's going on with the time travel for Trojan and Midnighter, and I don't think it's high enough for me. I don't think I care enough about Midnighter as a character or this story to go back and put in that much effort. But I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe it'll end up being important enough for me to go back and read. But at least I felt like when I read this, I didn't feel lost. That's what I'll say about it.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel compelled to sum up for people what it is, what's happened here. And when I sum it up, I'm going to make it sound very simple. And by making it sound really simple, that is me giving an insult to the writing team, because they made this ridiculously overcomplicated over a course of umpteen backups and Future State. And there's no reason why we needed to have this plot point explained, and we needed this complex time jumping around and all this other nonsense and this occupying two minds in Midnighter. Good grief. The bottom line here is that in the future, this Trojan guy is going to build a satellite called Crystallis. He's going to refine it's going to be used to refine and convert the waste generated by Warworld. Basically, Warworld's exhaust. Its exhaust is going to be converted into Neridium, and Neridium is something that's like kryptonite. It's capable of not only killing Superman, but eliminating all organic life. That's what Neridium does, and Trojan uses that in an attempt, or will use that in an attempt in the future, to eliminate all human life, because he wants everybody to be a machine. That's really it. This guy's like a crazy Bill Gates, a psychotic Bill Gates. That's really all you need to know, but unfortunately, this Trojan guy in the future, who has already become a robot, in the future infuses with the mind of future Midnighter, whose consciousness is then transported back in time to the present day, and this is the backup features that we're getting. And through this mess, the criticism I have is I don't believe for 1 second I cannot see Midnighter, this brooding, dark person who's gay, talking to his arch enemy in his head, almost like bonding with him, telling him about talking about love and his relationship with Apollo. It's so ridiculous. Midnighter would never do that. Some of this stuff, I know that this Trojan's in his head, but you know, Becky Cloonan, I think it's Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad, right?
Yep.
They write this.
Yep.
I know that they understand Midnighter. I know that they understand the character of Midnighter. I know they do. But frankly, I think it went off the rails here with this issue. But at least, everything. At least they info dumped to try to explain what the hell's been going on so far in a more cohesive way. So it's a little bit easier to understand this issue. And incidentally, Trojan created his own boom tube, and the reason why Trojan kidnapped Mr. Miracle, which was baffling last issue, is that they need a boom tube to boom tube onto Warworld. But now that they created their own boom tube, they don't need Mr. Miracle anymore. So this ends with them potentially killing Mr. Miracle. And how this lines up with the continuity in the Mr. Miracle series that we're reviewing, I have no idea. But there you have it.
Yeah, the biggest problem with this, and it's probably a byproduct of the narrative being so complicated, this is a very plot-driven story. And if you're a fan of Midnighter, you're a fan of Midnighter because he's a really cool character. And the best stories are character-driven, not plot-driven. And this is 100% plot-driven, and that's why I think it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. Harley Quinn number 4. Written by Stephanie Phillips, art and cover by Riley Rossmo, colored by Yvonne Placencia, lettered by Ann Roll Design. I don't have much to say about this other than I guess Riley Rossmo's art's growing on me because I thought the art in this issue was fine. And other than the interaction between Harley and Solomon Grundy, which I really enjoyed, I didn't really have much to say. I just thought it was okay. And again, I'm not the biggest Harley fan. So yeah, it felt like Harley. It looked like Harley. I don't know. I don't know what I missed. Again, just okay, but I don't think I'm the target audience for this, being not much of a Harley fan. So I'm sure you have a lot more to add to that.
I will say that this is part 2 of No Good Deed. This is Harley Quinn. Last issue, basically, Hugo Strange got the best of Harley Quinn. Hugo Strange has a SAFE program where he's collecting all these clowns of Gotham and he's going to reform them, but he's really experimenting on them. Harley Quinn wants to make a good impression as a hero now because she's become heroic. She wants to make a good impression on Batman, and she wants to collect these clowns, and she's got a new sidekick, Kevin, who she's she cares and she wants to help them, and she wants to use her background in psychology she actually cares and she wants to do her best to help them, as opposed to Hugo Strange, of course, wants to do the opposite. Well, this entire issue was a little disappointing to me. It's because not a lot happens. This entire issue is just Harley Quinn essentially just making her way to Hugo Strange's to SAFE headquarters, where Hugo Strange is, to confront Hugo Strange, because Hugo Strange kidnapped her sidekick Kevin last issue and she wants to get him back. Now, there are some funny moments here. The funniest moments I have is, well, she plays chess with Solomon Grundy, and Solomon Grundy is not particularly bright, but Harley Quinn is always constantly talking to herself, and Harley Quinn often discovers the answers to some of her questions, obviously through her own conversations with herself, and so Solomon Grundy really doesn't give her any insights, but she thanks him anyway. And again, a lot of this stuff, this dialogue, this is missing. I wish it could have a little bit more humor in this issue. But one thing I did find funny, I have to give full credit. She eventually leaves Solomon Grundy, and she's worried about Kevin, and she should be, because Hugo Strange is experimenting on him. But at one point, Harley Quinn ends up making her way to the safe haven, and she ends up she ends up imitating. At one point, she makes it to the safe house, and she imitates Batman's shadow by with her fingers, and she imitates Batman's shadow to scare away the Hugo Strange's henchman. I thought that was kind of funny, and she makes her way into the safe house, and again, Riley Rossmo's art here. There are times where I want to give him credit because he's really experimenting with what he's doing with the page and the layouts and just the different types of boxes and the shaped boxes. And it's just, he's really pulling out all the stops, and even with the sound effects and just the colors are bright. He's doing a really good job here. This is definitely a crazy, zany comic. It feels that way. This feels like a Harley comic to me. And even here, there's a great elevator scene where you see the elevator levels on the right side of the page, and it's an elevator fight scene where she's fighting all these minions, and it's just the color. It's just beautifully done, and you can see as the elevator is going to the various levels, she's actually fighting and kicking the butt out of these guys, and it's done in a crazy zany way. It's not as sexually provocative as it reminded me a little bit of the scene in Suicide Squad, the movie, where she was in the elevator scene, which was kind of interesting. Anyways, I thought it was well done. This isn't necessarily going to win anybody over to the series, this particular issue, but I enjoyed it. It continues with the story, and it ends with ultimately Harley Quinn confronting Hugo Strange, which I thought she was going to do at the beginning of this issue. So that's why I thought this issue was very decompressed. It probably could have been almost skipped. We could almost go from last issue. We could skip this issue, but in any ways, it is what it is. It's not the first time a writer maybe sort of threw in a lot of unnecessary exposition. It was still fun, and it allowed Riley Rossmo to continue to impress me with his creativity, notwithstanding the fact that I'm not necessarily a big fan of his style. But I got to give him credit where credit's due.
Yeah, I thought the funniest moment was Solomon Grundy correcting Harley on her ground when she says whoever, and he says whomever. That got a chuckle out of me.
I forgot that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Let's talk about Robin number 3 next, written by Joshua Williamson. Gleb Melnikov handles the art. Luis Guerrero on colors, which is interesting because Melnikov was doing the colors at first, and I commented, I wondered how long he was going to be able to keep it up. And then Troy Petrie handles the letters. So we know that last issue, Robin, Damian Wayne, was resurrected. It's Lazarus Island, so nobody can die there. And basically the rules of this tournament were laid out for him. They can't fight at night, and everybody basically has 3 lives, like straight out of a video game, right? Well, you want to talk about nothing really happening in this issue and being able to skip and move right on to the next one. That you could say the same thing for this Robin number 3. He strolls around and Ravager's trying to convince him he needs to make friends and learn how to relax, and that'll help his fighting somehow. Although he doesn't seem to buy that. And when he calls her out on why, she can't explain it. She just says, trust me. So it's not clear to me how him making friends or being able to relax would possibly
exactly
help him be a better fighter. And so eventually he leaves the beachfront party and heads up to this statue where he can sense that this is where the previous inhabitants of the island used to do their rituals. And who does he find there but Connor Hawke? And despite the bonding that they start to have, because basically they are both the sons of superheroes whose fathers don't have powers but have high expectations, they have a lot in common, is what I'm getting at. And they start to sort of bond over that. And then before, and maybe because of this, before they can actually become friends, one of the League of Shadows, Master Dusk, actually shows up, and Damian remembers him from when he was young, and he basically eggs them on to where they break the rules and they have a fight. And then Hawk is actually able to overcome Damian, which I find interesting since Damian's supposed to be the best fighter in the DCU. And Hawk basically throws him off a cliff. and before Damien can hit the water. And Master Dust says, I know if we kill you, you'll be resurrected, but what if you don't die and you're just have to live in pain? So they don't want to actually kill him. They just want to kind of incapacitate him. So they toss him off a cliff, but before he hits the water and the rocks below, he's rescued by somebody, and he thinks, based on the way he was rescued, somebody comes swinging in on a rope or a line or what have you, and so you can understand why Damien would think it was his father, but it turns out it's actually his grandfather, and we get the blurb, what's happened to Ra's al Ghul? Like, where's he been? Why is he here? Why did he rescue Damien? I got to be honest, I really don't care. This series is quickly losing interest for me. Part of the reason I hung on was because I do like Connor Hawke as a character, but this version of Connor Hawke that we get from Williamson didn't feel like any version of Connor Hawke that I've ever read before, and so why am I gonna hang around? That being said, the art by Meldikov, the colors are very well done. It's not particularly dialogue heavy, but Troy Petrie is one of the best letters in the business, and he does a great job of keeping the story moving. Particularly, I'll call out the way he lays out the dialogue on the splash page, where Damien and Connor Hawke are sitting on the cliff talking about their dads. The back and forth is laid out very well. You can see there if you're watching us on YouTube. And it really gives a feel of the conversation and moves your eye along the page very, very well. So technically it's a pretty well done comic, but the plot is losing interest for me in a pretty big hurry. I don't care about Damien, and this is not Connor Hawke that I know, so why should I read it? What were your thoughts, Rocky?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not really sure. The first two issues I thought were very interesting because I thought it was fun. This was going to be that Joshua Williamson. He's never been very good at building character. Joshua Williamson, at least not to my mind. He's always come up short on that in that regard. And I thought, well, at least we're going to get a plot centric. We're going to get a fun plot, and it's kind of a crazy Mortal Kombat type of plot, and let's have some fun with it. And I thought maybe we were going to go there, and now it's like I don't care about Ra's al Ghul either. And Ra's al Ghul, he's not a mystery. He's never really a mystery, Ra's al Ghul. At least it hasn't been lately. But thing is, we don't know what the hell's going on with the DC Omniverse. We don't know what's normal and what isn't. And so part of the thing is that I'm not sure. Is it supposed to be a mystery that Ra's al Ghul just shows up? I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure why. I actually was prepared not to take this storyline all that seriously because it is kind of a stupid storyline. If you want me to take it seriously, then I'm gonna start asking questions that I know Joshua Williamson doesn't have answers for. Namely, how come the best of the best aren't competing on the island? Because they're not. Why? I mean, if it takes place over 100 years, who won last time? And they must be immortal because aren't you going to defend yourself? Like, who's the champion? Why isn't Batman, Lady Shiva, like all these other? I got all kinds of questions. Yet now, having said that, I don't even want to. I'll focus on what I liked. I was really it was interesting to see how much Damien and Connor Hawke have in common. They really do have both. They both have screwed up relationships with their father, and they've both been killed. They both come back from the dead. It's amazing how much they actually have in common, these two, and it is quite interesting. And but I'm going to hold Joshua Williamson accountable for one thing. According to the rules that he established for this tournament, both of these contestants are now disqualified. They fought at night. They're disqualified. Yep. I mean, they're disqualified. You fight at night, you're disqualified. You broke the rules. I mean, I don't know. How are they not disqualified? So neither one of them can win. So at least, or is it nobody knows that they fought at night? Like, it just seems to me that, I mean, why would Volko tell Connor to attack Damien when he's disqualified then? I mean, it just seems to me, I don't know. It just seems kind of forced just so we can get rid of Damien, throw Damien off a cliff, crack his back. And so he just a forced way to meet Ra's al Ghul. And so what? Damien's now gonna pull like a Jean-Claude Van Damme and do some splits over a couple rocks at the bottom of by the beach with Razo Gall training him, and then he's gonna come back and win the tournament that he should have been disqualified from to begin with. I don't know. Like, I don't even know where their story is supposed to be going. I don't see the point of this. I thought this was going to be. Is this a character arc? Damien still is hallucinating seeing Alfred. What's that about? So now he's got Alfred. He's hallucinating with Alfred talking to him, and now he's got Raza Gall training him. So he's got a father figure in his head talking to him. He's got Raza Gall, a quasi grandpa figure, and meanwhile he's got the shadow of his dad in the background. There's a lot going on here, and there's the wrong writer trying to make it happen. But that's me being cynical. But hey, I just want to see who kicks ass. I'm in this for the Mortal Kombat aspect of it.
Yeah, and I'll cut Josh Williamson a break here. I won't necessarily say it's the right writer. Just to me, it's not, because I don't think it's a bad comic. It's just about a character that I don't care about. That's me. All right, up next, Mr. Miracle, The Source of Freedom, #2, written by Brandon Easton. Fico Asio is the artist. We've got Rico Renzi on colors, Rob Lee on letters. I think the first issue really took Rocky and myself both by surprise. It was a lot better than we expected it to be. What do you think here of the second issue, Rock?
I continue to I actually quite enjoyed this. I really enjoyed it. One of the I found it interesting that this new character that showed up, that claiming to be the child of this never freedom, claiming to never free, claiming to be the I guess the daughter of Scott Free and Big Barda, ends up apparently is from an alternate timeline, which I'm actually kind of glad, because I didn't want this never freedom to be the offspring of Big Barda and Scott Free from Earth Zero, and so it's from a different timeline. And Shiloh Norman's I guess, what do you call it, boombox or Motherbox, thank you. Motherbox doesn't know how this never freedom, why they end up attacking, why she's attacking him in an alternate reality. So there's all kinds of questions being asked here. Meanwhile, though, what's really interesting here, and what writer Brandon Easton does very well, and I just want to set this up here, is in the first battle, in the battle that they have, that Shiloh has with this never free, is he ends up, half his face gets exposed, and so the world discovers that he's African American. And the most interesting part of this story to me is his reaction to that, and his agent's reaction to his agent Vito, is, his press agent, is trying to deal with that, and the way social media reacts to the discovery that Mr. Miracle, Shiloh Norman, is an African American. And I think it's a very accurate reaction. There's positive reactions to it, and there's negative reactions to it, as you would expect in our divisive world. And I thought that was handled, I think, very well. You got the reaction of the world's media to that. Meanwhile, you get Never Free and her core members, who are powered by source energy. So she's got these green energy creatures called the core. They're helping her defeat Mr. Miracle, but he keeps using the mother box to jump to different parts of the earth to escape her. Meanwhile, Vito takes Shiloh and takes him to the old residence of the previous Mr. Miracle. And I had to write it down because I always forget his name.
Thaddeus Brown,
thank you. And Thaddeus Brown has actually had a secret home, a secret location where he actually kept he kept his, well, actually, he was even buried there. His ashes, the ashes of Thaddeus Brown, were actually kept in one of his old residences, and what we thought was an urn ends up to be some sort of alternate power source that Mr. Miracle utilizes to ultimately defend himself against this new Mr. Miracle, this Never Free. And I thought it was very well. It's Brandon Easton is doing a good job of sort of fans of Thaddeus Brown, because Thaddeus Brown at one point, I believe, trained Shiloh Norman. And so it's a way of sort of creating some degree of legacy, that Thaddeus Brown was an older generation hero, and that legacy is carried forward with Shiloh. And there's even a great scene with Shiloh talking to his girlfriend, because he had a disastrous date with her last issue that didn't go well, and he comes to terms with that, and he apologizes for kind of being a jerk in the previous issue. I just thought the character work here continues to be very, very good, and I don't think the politics of this, when he was so worried about the world finding out he was African American, he liked the anonymity that it brought him, and he was afraid to be true to who he really was. I thought that was handled very well, and I think it's played very well here. I continue to be really impressed. I love this headquarters of Thaddeus Brown. I love his agent cares for him. I love the arts. I think is so cool. I just artistically a Fico Ocio. I really like his art. I really like his art, and yeah, I continue to be impressed, Jace. What about yourself?
I didn't enjoy this issue as much as the first one. And and maybe it's just me nitpicking. Here's this guy. So Thaddeus Brown wasn't a hero. He was just an escape artist. He trained both Scott Free and Shiloh Norman. And Scott Free obviously used those powers to become a superhero. And Shiloh's kind of taking a page out of that book. World's greatest escape artist and hero, as opposed to Thaddeus, who's just a showman. So, I get that, and that's fine. What I don't understand is, despite the fact that Never Free, which, first of all, I don't think Scott Free and Barta, not the ones we would know, would ever name their kid Never. Never say never, right? So that's just like, what? But then she's obviously from a different timeline, so I, like you, was glad it wasn't Jake, their son that we saw in the Tom King and Mitch Garrett series.
Jacob,
but Shiloh Norman, those names, you mentioned them before. I don't know. He calls her Barbara even. I don't even know who Scott or Barbara are. So again, Omniverse, where does this take place? I mean, how does Shiloh Norman not know Scott Free? He clearly should, at least in the DC universe that I'm familiar with. So
that's true.
But whatever. I mean, that's neither here nor there. It's just something that I noticed, and it hasn't been made clear. The two things that do kind of bother me. I do find it interesting, and obviously Brandon Easton made race part of this story in the first issue, and I thought that was interesting and relevant. I do agree with you that the social media reaction of people, some people think it's good, some people don't. I thought that was very realistic. But what I don't really get or agree with, like, are you telling me that this skin-tight mask that he has previously worn, even though it didn't show the color of his skin, he has very African-American features? He has very full lips. He has a very broad nose. Like, nobody ever speculated that he was a black guy before. It just seems like this discourse would have happened previously. So again, just kind of a nitpicky thing that kind of pulled me out of the story a little bit. But I do find that whole aspect of the story, as I said, to be very relevant and very important. It's important to talk about those kind of conversations. The other part of it, though, that like right away when I was reading it, that struck me, and especially when you're talking about what role Shiloh Norman tries to play, right? It's all about his clicks. It's all about his social media presence. It's all about his popularity. It's all about his celebrity at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So he's having this big battle in Metropolis, and he effectively just runs away and leaves a big mess, all kinds of destruction behind him. And I'm not saying it's his fault that the destruction was caused. Obviously, he's being attacked by these villains led by Never Free, but he just runs away. Teleport. He literally tells his mother box, teleport me as far away from here as possible. And I got to think somebody who's as plugged into celebrity and perception And we all know perception is reality in that world, the world of celebrity. Rumors start and they're not even true, and it can destroy your career. That it's got to look real bad to just run away. And I understand he was getting his butt kicked and maybe he didn't have a choice, but I just thought that was interesting. And the narrative didn't necessarily, because I thought that he was going to go there when we get the news feeds and they start talking about how his identity was, they don't know who it is exactly, but obviously they know it's a person of color. And I thought that especially because of that, and we know about, institutional racism or whatever, they'd be like, oh yeah, and by the way, he ran away. It did bring up the whole thing of stealing other magicians' acts, which maybe had, may not have been as much of a narrative if he wasn't a person of color. But I don't know. I thought that would be a bigger thing. Hey, he ran away. There was this huge fight and he ran away. But it wasn't mentioned. But overall, I enjoyed it. You're right about the art. It's absolutely spectacular. Very, very kinetic art. A lot of action. I also think that Fico, when Shiloh does get that call from the woman that he went on that date with, Denise, she's beautiful. Like, I love the way Fico draws her, man. She looks hot. So I appreciated that. And yeah, what's to come? I don't know. I'm still interested. It wasn't that this issue was terrible and it totally turned me off and I'm out. But I don't think it was as strong as the first issue. But overall, it was a lot of action packed almost from start to finish. And so for that reason, there wasn't a lot of time for character moments. Pretty much only got the character moments when Shiloh shows up at Vito's office and finds out that, hey, they know you're African American now. And then a little bit when he was on the phone with Denise, we can sort of see a little bit of the true Shiloh Norman. And Denise even comments on it. Like, oh yeah, this is the guy that I wanted to have a date with. Like, you're actually being real with me instead of just, spouting Hollywood nonsense like we saw him last time. And he apologizes, saying, yeah, I sort of forgot how to talk to somebody and kind of normally. So there were a few character moments, but not as much as the first issue. But overall, still really good, still really impressed, especially on the artistic side of things. So
yeah, and you hit the nail on the head because I'd read that too. How he doesn't know who Scott Free is in Big Barda. I mean, if he's and he's got a mother box that's from Apocalypse or New Genesis, so he must know Darkseid. And if he knows Darkseid, how can you not know Big Barda? Or it just seems very, very odd, very confusing.
Yep, very odd. All right, up next, Justice League number 63, Prisms Part 5, written by Brian Michael Bendis, art by David Marquez, colors by Yvonne Placencia, letters by Josh Reed. There's also the Justice League Dark Backup, which is written by Ram V. The art is by Xermanico, which, again, I'm not sure how he's drawing Infinite Frontier and this. Maybe this was done ahead of time because there's no way with all the characters in Infinite Frontier he could be drawn both at the same time. Colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Rob Lee. What did you think of the main story here, Rocky? Predictable?
Wow. Just nothing. Extremely predictable. Nothing happens. I said very explicitly in when we reviewed the opening issue of Bendis's Justice League, and that was issue, I think was that 61, 50? I don't even know. I can't remember. In any event, I said that what would likely happen is that we would learn absolutely nothing by the end of this arc about Naomi's homeworld. And in fact, that's true. We learned absolutely really nothing. We just learned that Flash was bad at math, and that they went to the Brutus from Naomi's homeworld attacked our Earth, and then they went and attacked his Earth, and then they had to come back because it's poison because Flash screwed up on the math, and that's it. That's really it. And at the end, apparently Naomi, who proved that she was a young brat, proved that she doesn't know how to listen in this at the end of this issue. She didn't listen to Superman. She didn't follow orders. She overreacted. She wanted to stay and attack Zumbado. And she's proven that she's young and inexperienced. And of course, she shouldn't be a member of the Justice League. Nobody in their right mind would want her to be on the Justice League. There's no explanation as to why they would want her on the Justice League. There's no logic provided as to why they would want her on the Justice League. I don't even think this woman should be this young girl would make Teen Titans Academy, except for the fact that she's got this ridiculously high power set. There wasn't even an explanation. You would think that Bendis would have at least maybe Batman or Superman or somebody say the obvious, that, well, maybe we should have her on the team because we have to keep an eye on her because she's clearly not particularly bright. She's clearly she clearly doesn't know how to handle her powers very well. She's for the umpteenth time. It's an ongoing joke. If you've read Bendis's Young Justice, if you've read his Action Comics, if you read his Naomi series, Naomi has said multiple times that I'm so new at this. I'm so new at this. She's like a broken record. Over the course of I think it was about a year, all of Naomi's adventures that in our time took place over the course of a year, only 2 days passed in Naomi's life. It's insane. In any event, beautiful art. There are on this thing, there are a number of pages which I gotta say there's double page spreads here, which there's I should start off by saying that Bendis uses his usual trope by jumping to the end of the story, has Naomi wake up, and then she's she can't remember, and she talks to Black Canary, and then they recount what happens, and then we got beautiful art by David Marquez, double page spreads of a battle that we already know the ending to, that the Justice League is escaping. Again, nothing happens. They just come back to our Earth, and it's so frustrating. Nothing happens. This is I wish there was something of substance, but nothing happens. It's astonishing that you can have so much dialogue and totally it's without substance. And yeah, it's annoying. It's annoying. I will say this at the end, Zimbardo gets pissed off at Brutus because Brutus is a minion of Zimbardo. Brutus obviously wanted to come to our Earth and conquer it without Zimbardo knowing. Zimbardo has found out about it and now is going to be utilizing Brutus and this other character to recreate the tech to find our world again, because Batman took it with him when he came back. So this is just exactly what myself and others have predicted. This is just a way to convey no information so that all the relevant information you're forced to buy Bendis's Volume 2 of Naomi whenever that comes out. That's and I hate to say it, but that's what this is. Waste of time, beautiful art, but a complete waste of a series. You don't need to read this at all. And
this isn't news, right? Yeah. Bendis, I mean, this is the guy that took 8 issues to cover what Stan and Jack covered in Amazing Spider-Man #1, right? Yeah. Like, this is not news that the guy tells the most decompressed stories of anybody working. But you're right, it's super frustrating because there are the kernels of a good idea here, and he's wasting great art by David Marquez. But he can't, I mean, even when Marquez gets to give us those big splash pages, those big double page spreads, like I said last issue, I don't know exactly the way they're working. He's worked with Marquez for a long time, but even that is hard to follow. Like, there's all these insets and what order do you read it in? And it's messy, even though it looks great. It's messy in terms of the narrative and how you read it. So in my mind, you want to know how to make this better, DC? Where's David Walker? I know you have his number. He co-wrote Naomi with Bendis, and that's why I think Naomi actually was as big of a hit as it was. Because again, I think Bendis, Rocky said it earlier, he's a good idea guy, but technically, in order to actually write the script and have the comic make sense technically and have things actually happen and move the narrative along at anything other than a snail's pace, you got to bring a co-writer on for Bendis. he's just incapable of doing it by himself. I don't understand. I mean, I know that a lot of people, they laud his character work, and I even said earlier, you want a story that is character driven rather than plot driven. And that's what Bendis is trying to do. The problem is he's not doing a very good job of it. To go back to something else Rocky said earlier, he doesn't know these characters well enough. And I don't know how you can say, how do you not know Batman or Superman well enough at this point? I feel like everybody who's a comic fan should know them well enough at this point, but maybe there's a difference between knowing them and being able to write them accurately. So there are some cool moments, and the art is great, like Rocky said, but overall, yeah, it just feels like predictable and paint by the numbers. And yeah, especially when we started off and Naomi was back in the Justice League headquarters in the Hall of Justice, I was like, oh yeah, here we go. Bendis is going to start, at the end and then flash back. Yep. Like, you don't have to do that every time. You can, Brian, just start at point A and tell the story sequentially and get to point B. Without any flashbacks of yesterday, 2 weeks ago, a month ago, 2 years ago. You can just tell the story in order. That's allowed. You can do that. Maybe just once in a while for a change up. Just to do something different. You don't always have to flashback. It's so predictable and tired at this point. And honestly, that's how I feel when I read Bendis' work now. I just feel tired. It's the same old thing, time and time again. Super decompressed. You got to read 6 issues to actually get a chunk of story. And, we know we're going to get extraneous dialogue that's not needed. We know that dialogue these days, it wasn't always the case back in the day where it was, pretty on point, but now it's going to feel awkward and dated. And yeah, it's going to take forever for something to happen. And at the end of the day, what happens is exactly what you expect. Naomi joining the Justice League. So.
I don't know why Bendis, if there's a, like for example, the page that I'm showing now, and for those listening, there's all the members of the Justice League are surrounding Naomi, who's on a bed. And there's 7 members of the Justice League talking to Naomi, who's on the bed. And on the page, Bendis absolutely seems intent on making sure that every single character blurts out something, even if it's totally useless. Whether it's an or it's ridiculous. He doesn't seem to understand that we don't need to hear from everybody. Doesn't need to talk all the time. It's like he's keeping track. Flash never said something in 2 panels. He's got to utter something. It's like it's literally like he really is scripting an episode of Friends where somebody has to blurt out something. Just let the story tell itself and don't have nonsense dialogue. It's so frustrating, like saying. And the only way to really experience it, I hate to say it, is to read it. But then that would mean I'd have to recommend it, and I can't in good conscience, frankly, do that. But hey, look, if you're a Naomi fan, okay, you're going to want to probably pick this up, even though I got to tell you, you're not missing anything. You're really not missing a heck of a lot.
You're not.
But whatever, go ahead and pick it up. But you're not missing much.
No, you're not. I mean, all you have to do is if you're listening to this, just jump over to the YouTube channel and look at the page that Rocky has up right now and just see. I mean, it's covered. The art is covered in word balloons. It's so unnecessary, completely unnecessary. Anyway, moving on to the backup. As I said, Ram V, Xermanico on art, Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors, Rob Lee on letters. This was okay. Probably my least favorite part of the story so far. Only because, kind of like the first story in this issue, nothing really happens. We do get some girl showing up at the end that is attacking some cult with Batman looking on. That has me intrigued. Technically, it's a great story, just like Ram-V usually does, and the art by Xermanico is great as well. But all this does when I read this is it doesn't feel like a big enough chunk of story, and I end up wishing that this was the main story, and what Bendis did in his main story could have easily fit in this same amount of pages as the backup, and we wouldn't lose anything. Nothing. Just cut out the extraneous dialogue, cut out the double page spreads, put that as the backup, and let Ram V work his magic on the Justice League Dark and the main story. I'd be much happier. very, very high quality story. And even in just these few pages, we get more happening than we did in Bendis' story. So, yeah, Justice League Dark. I've said it before. I've said it. I'll say it again. It needs its own book. What are you waiting for, DC?
Yeah. I'll just build on that. One of the things that's established here is that we know that last issue, Merlin stole a book that gave him the location of some further hidden magics in Atlantis. And in this issue, John Constantine at the beginning very cleverly gets them out. They're sort of trapped in the library. And he breaks the fourth wall by, just like last issue, they actually read Ram V's script. In this issue, John Constantine writes them out of the trap that they're in the library. It's kind of interesting. And this ties into Future State in a way that one of the weaknesses that Merlin has is that he doesn't have a seer. Merlin cannot see into the future. Merlin cannot, and that, because if you recall at the end of Future State, in order to save the members of Justice League Dark, Dr. Fate, Kali Nasser, makes a deal with Merlin and says, spare my friends and I will be your seer. Because because Merlin can't use the helmet of fate. Only Khalid Nasser can. And so, and that's the one thing that Merlin can't access is the helmet of Naboo and to peer into the future. And so that's one of the things that's why it's interesting here that Merlin is way ahead of them, and he's 12 steps ahead of them. And the only way they're going to get ahead to even compete with Merlin is to actually peer into the future. And they're utilizing that power of fate here through the helmet. And that's what's interesting. And that's what they're attempting to do. And what they see when they look into the future is they see the 13th night. And this 13th night was the 13th Templar night that was actually protecting the sword Excalibur that Merlin actually finally retrieved. And then Merlin killed this 13th night, but she didn't die. And so she's now at some point I'm assuming she's going to meet up with Justice League Dark, and she's going to but in this particular scene she's I think she's trying to get a hold of I think she's trying to find Merlin here, but obviously, like you said, Batman shows up, and that's very interesting. Why Batman would show up, that is very interesting, because I don't know why Batman would know anything about what's happening with Merlin, let alone what's going on in that church. So the plot thickens
because he's Batman.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But this is interesting. I mean, all these plots are moving together, and again, we're moving toward Future State, and again, I wonder how accessible this is to new readers. Maybe just coming in cold, it might be pretty tough. But I mean, for readers like us who've been following it, it's much more. I suspect it's much more enjoyable for us.
Yeah, exactly. All right, moving on. Batman Reptilian #1. So I think a lot of people have been looking forward to this as soon as it got announced by Liam Sharp that he was working on a new Black Label book with Garth Ennis, and we finally have it. So Liam is fully painting this, digital painting, and that style that you saw in toward the end of his the Green Lantern run with Garth Ennis. He's continuing that style and going even a little crazier with it in terms of this is dark, this is moody, this is very broody, and Gotham City, and he can kind of let loose, and that whole idea of Batman Reptilian, and is it a horror story, and there's a lot of shadow and a lot of blacks and whatnot. So the art is fantastic. It is amazing. The skylines look suitably gothic, like Gotham City should. Batman is a very imposing and scary figure a lot of times. So it's fantastic. I love kind of the stylized character designs he's using for some of these classic Batman villains. They look different than maybe you're used to seeing them. Penguin's got a giant beak, for lack of a better term. The Joker looks crazy with this big nose and giant lips. Scarecrow looks like he's wearing pantyhose on his head. I especially love the way he draws Mad Hatter with this top hat that's like 3 feet high. It's just fantastic. It's really great, moody art. In terms of the story, I mean, it's Garth Ennis writing a story about Batman, so it's pretty dark and it's pretty. I don't want to say it's overtly violent, but there's a lot of implied violence, and he sort of plays that up to humor at various times. Batman's talking to Alfred about a 911 call where a bunch of his villains were found assaulted and gutted, and Alfred says dead. He goes, just mutilated. Did you do it? It's like, no, Batman. Of course, Batman didn't do it, but it's those kind of sort of funny moments, that dark humor, I guess you'd call it, that Ennis is so great about. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really good. The opening scene where Batman confronts this boxer who had sexually assaulted a couple of prostitutes, and he has some slick lawyer that gets him off. And so Batman confronts him, and basically calls him out for being a coward. That sort of sets the tone. Like this is not your usual, regular DC universe Batman who, especially back in the day when he played more by the rules. He's much more powerful now. We've talked many times about the power creep of Batman and how he's the most powerful character in the DC universe these days, and he can do anything. This is a different sort of Batman. This is a Batman that very much the line between right and wrong. It's not quite so easily defined. It's a little blurry, and you would expect that from Garth Ennis. So I think this is a success. I think that a lot of people are going to be talking about it this week. There's a Bill Sienkiewicz cover which shows Killer Croc on it, which I'm again not sure. Is that where the reptilian part comes in? I mean, Croc shows up here, but not in any kind of important way. No more so than Poison Ivy or Two-Face or Mad Hatter or any of the rest that I mentioned. So, I thought this was really great. I mean, Liam was nice enough to share some preview pages with me a couple months ago, and now I was blown away by the art then, and now seeing it all together, the whole story and the dialogue and whatnot. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I think a lot of people are going to be talking about this book this week. So what did you think, Rocky?
I thought this was really good. I thought this was I can't believe that this was actually, I'm stunned to acknowledge that this is actually a take on Batman that I actually quite like. It's actually kind of I don't know, I hesitate to call it a unique take on Batman, but it's an interpretation of Batman we haven't really got a lot of before in my mind. First I want to give a shout out I love the tribute to Steve Dillon, Liam Sharp's a tribute. It's for Steve Dillon. Steve Dillon, of course, passed, I think, a couple years ago. Steve Dillon was a great collaborator with Garth Ennis on many a project, and this apparently this was a project meant for Steve Dillon at one point. I didn't know that, but in any event, I thought that was a nice shout out at the beginning. But what I like about this Batman, you hit the nail on the head. This is not your mainstream DC Universe Batman at all. This is a Batman that has a very dark sense of humor. He is hard and fast and no nonsense. He is blunt. He is direct. He insults criminals. He thinks criminals are stupid. He thinks they have a low IQ. He refuses to kill them, not because he's being nice, but because he wants them to live and to suffer. That's why Batman never kills, and I'd never thought of it that way before. What an interesting take. I always think, well, Batman doesn't kill because he's going to become what he might, no. He doesn't kill because if he kills them, that will stop their suffering, and he's going to make them suffer. And that's what he does with that boxing champion who gets off for raping 2 girls because he paid off. He uses his monies to hire people to intimidate the witnesses and everything else. This is Batman who intimidates the hell out of people, and he humiliates this boxer, and he gets this boxer champion to assault him. And of course, Batman just moves away and he calls it, it's self-defense, and this boxer ends up hurting himself. It's fantastic. Like you said, right away, we know that this Batman's different. This Batman is a hardcore, darker Batman, and he doesn't care what happens to the criminal. He'll ensure that they will not die, but that doesn't mean that they're going to enjoy living. And
exactly.
That's what I like about it. That's actually the type of dark Batman that you would expect, who went through the trauma that young Bruce Wayne did. And that's what I really, really like about this. And there's a character, Konstantin Volkov, that Batman is looking into, who was a former member of the Scarecrow gang. And Batman wants to recruit him to infiltrate the Joker's gang. And as part of his investigation, looking into what exactly happened to all these villains, because a lot of the rogues got the Joker, the Riddler, a lot of them were badly injured, and there's a mystery as to who was behind it. Batman doesn't so much care that they were injured. He does, and again, he wants them to live, but he wants them to live so that they can suffer, as far as I'm concerned. Anyways, I really like this. I don't know why they call it Batman Reptilian. I'm assuming that's because maybe, like you said, maybe a reptile or a killer croc is going to be the main bad guy. One can assume. I don't know. But right now, this really whets my appetite. Simply for the characterization, at this point, I'm so refreshed. I'm so pleased with this characterization of Batman. This is a nice, fresh take on Batman. A Batman who's kind of an asshole, but kind of isn't. And he's just on the cusp of being a murderous bastard, but he's going to pull back because he'd rather opt for a torturous life for the criminal than a quick death. I love it.
Yeah, maybe that's where the Reptilian, maybe he's cold-blooded. This Batman is cold-blooded.
Yeah, maybe.
So, possibly. All right, moving on. We have Batman Superman number 19, written by Luen Yang. This book jumps across different timelines, and we have different artists for the different timelines. So, Emmanuel Lupacchino, Steve Lieber, Derek Robertson, and Kyle Holtz handle the pencils. We have Matt Santorelli, Steve Lieber, Derek Robertson, and Kyle Holtz on inks. Sabine Rich does the colors, Seda Temofonte on letters. And we should also mention that it was announced earlier this week or last week, I should say, that Batman Superman is coming to an end with issue number 22. And we know I think the last two issues are going to be a Calendar Man story. So I guess this story arc is going to wind up next issue with issue 20, which would still make it, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That would make it a 5-issue. And then 2 issues left. So I guess when DC goes to collect Luen Yang's Batman Superman, they'll just collect all 7 issues in one trade paperback. Yeah. So anyway, what did you think of this, Rocky?
I actually enjoyed this. I thought maybe I was maybe a little bit unfair in my criticism last issue. I thought maybe this thing sort of dragged on a little bit longer than it needed to. But this was fun. Essentially, this involves, we get to the secret of this issue, of this Arterio character who was essentially a person that became obsessed with sort of creating the perfect world, and he did so by sort of creating different movies and taking the best parts of each individual movie, i.e. the best part of each universe, each world, to create one perfect world. And he does it through the use of this Phantom Zone crystal. And through the use of this Phantom Zone crystal, that's how he sort of plucks from different timelines and different stories the best parts of every story to create the perfect world. And this, again, the benefit of this type of story that Luen Yang is telling is that you get so many different styles of art. And it works because you got Lupacchino, you got Lieber, you got Robertson, Kyle, you got Hotz, you got all these different artists, and that's because they're dealing with different timelines, different types of stories, and so naturally you're going to have, just like you have different types of movies, you have different types of art in comic books, and you have the film strip going through all of their adventures, and as they're going through the various the different types of movies and different adventures, it works really well. Lex Luthor, who was Dr. Adam in a previous adventure in the previous issue, he ends up sacrificing himself this issue, which is kind of ironic, given the fact that he always felt that people that he makes the comment that it's ironic that he's going out for being the type of person that he would routinely type of criticize. But in any event, it was there was humor in this issue. It was I thought it was well done. I love Westerns. I like The Rocketeer, and we sort of get a combination of that because we go to the planet Ran and we see Alana, daughter of Sardath. So we get her, and then we get El Diablo in this great Western, and all the while they're chasing this Phantom Zone crystal in order to get the crystal, in order to prevent the destruction of all these worlds and prevent Arterio from creating and destroying all these worlds and just creating one massive one. Jean Lun Liang is focusing on the fact that Superman himself refuses to take up Arterio's offer to. He says to Superman, "Look, I'll make you an offer. I'll create the perfect world that you want, with a lot of elements that you like, but we're gonna have to sacrifice Batman's world." And you got to remember that Superman and Batman are from different worlds. They technically don't know each other very well in this particular story. But Superman, of course, true to his character, doesn't do that. He refuses to give in. That's Yang's way of emphasizing the goodness of Superman. And again, this has so much action, so much adventure, and ultimately, again, I do feel it could have ended this issue, but it ended once again on another cliffhanger. This time, teasing Etrigan the Demon, we're going to be seeing, I guess, in the final issue. Again, very adventurous, very creative. This is a fun story. I think this is going to read really fun as a trade, a 7-issue trade. It will be well worth anybody's investment to pick up the trade. I might even buy it myself because it is a lot of fun, and it would definitely be a really good gift. I find that nowadays I'm very picky with comics that I give as presents to people, because I find even 6-issue story arcs are inaccessible, quite frankly. This is something that's totally accessible. This story is going to be a very good 7-issue, a good read, a lot of fun, and I know that even before I going to read the final issue of Yang's run. So overall, I'm pretty impressed artistically and narratively.
Yeah, I mean, the only negative I'd say is, we didn't get any Yvonne Reese art in this issue, and, I'm a big fan of his art, but I love the idea of these different artists coming in and doing the different eras. Obviously somebody does the Rand scene, somebody does I think it's Derek Robertson that does the El Diablo scene. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it works really, really well. The cool thing about the Etrigan that's coming, we know from what we see in the last pages, this isn't the brightly colored demon that we, all kind of know and love. So it's going to be a different version, just like we've gotten these different versions of these characters that we know. I mean, who would have thought I was going to see Batman and Robin in a cowboy hat? It's fantastic. So I think this is a really fun story by Yang. I agree with Rocky. Maybe he just had one Batman Superman team up story to tell, and this is it, and that's why the series is coming to a close. But I'm going to be sad to see it go, because this has been just a fantastic series ever since Yang came on with this idea. I will say one other thing that Rocky didn't mention. We learned about the Auteur.io supervillain, and he is sort of he's in a way, he's sort of a victim, the guy inside the actual armor. We find out he's son of the World Forger. So if you read Scott Snyder's Justice League, you'll know what that's all about. And some of that played out in the pages of Dark Knight Death Metal as well. And when he sort of showed up on one of these Earths, and, he had at one point been known in the Omniverse and been worshipped, and that kind of fell away, and he was feeling lonely and unrecognized. And he said he found a new house of worship. It was actually a film. It was a theater, in like the 20s or 30s, when film was huge, when it was first burst on the scene. And so for him, that reminded him of the adulation he used to have. And that's kind of how he fell in love with movies and how supposedly the whole motif of the story. And he even says, as the house of worship, that eventually faded away too. We know movies got less popular, multiplexes instead of one screen theaters took over and what have you, suburbs and all that. But his love of that kind of manifested itself and gained sentience and became this armor that then wanted to undertake this diabolical plan that he had. So I love that Yang kind of tied it into what's going on in the greater DC universe that in that way by making Auteur.io kind of this son of the World Forger. So yeah, thought it was really fantastic. I'm going to be sad to see it go. I'm also very, very curious to get to that Calendar Man story to see whether that, like I said, maybe Yang just had one idea for a story or 1.5 ideas enough to do a 2-story Calendar Man story. Like you couldn't keep going. Kind of disappointing. So anyway, on to the last book we're going to talk about. It's an anthology, Wonder Woman Black and Gold. So we have 4 stories here. Mother's Daughter, written by A.J. Mendez, art by Ming Doyle, lettered by Becca Carey. What Doesn't Kill You, written by Nadia Shamas, art by Morgan Beam, lettered by Ariana Marr. I'm Ageless, written by John Arcudi, art by Ryan Sook, lettered by Michael Heisler. Golden Age, written and illustrated by Amy Reeder, lettered by Gabriella Downey. And then The Wager, written and illustrated by Becky Cloonan, lettered by Pat Brousseau. Some really great variant covers. We've got a regular cover by Jen Bartel, and then we've got a variant by Yannick Paquette, Joshua Middleton, Ramona Fraden with Sandra Hope, and Trish Mulville. And I, of course, ordered the Ramona Fraden cover because she's amazing. I love Ramona Fraden. I've met her. She's awesome, and she drew the first comic I ever read, and I cried when I met her. I'm not ashamed to admit I was pretty overwhelmed. Yeah, she's awesome. So anyway, I'm not going to go over each of these stories individually. If you want to, Rocky, you can, obviously, but I'm just going to speak in general about the overall success of this. I think, first of all, the idea of going with just black and white with a gold color works really, really well. I think it works perfectly for Wonder Woman. It works much better than the Superman Red and Blue series, and I think these stories are of higher quality than the Superman Red Blue. And I think overall the story, like I couldn't even necessarily pick a favorite. I mean, these are great. The first one, Mother Daughter, is Wonder Woman going back to meet her mom and hang out with her in sort of a Themysciran type atmosphere, but really it's like this cabin in the woods, and it shows their love for each other as mother and daughter. The second one is probably my least favorite, and has to do with Wonder Woman and Cersei, her longtime nemesis, and I thought that one was okay. I'm Ageless by John Arcudi. The best thing about that's the Ryan Sook artwork. Seeing Ryan Sook artwork in black and white with some gold highlights is absolutely fantastic. There's a double page spread where they're in the Justice League satellite that I would love to have just the line art of that, like hanging up on my wall of my studio, because it is just amazing. Like maybe my favorite double page spread that Ryan Sook has ever done. I mean, it is that great. But basically that story just talks about how Wonder Woman is ageless, and Batman kind of calls her on that. Like, how could you care about humans when you don't die? So I thought that one was really fantastic. There's a Golden Age story with Wonder Woman and Etta Candy that's a lot of fun. And then there's one that sort of harkens back to, it's kind of a trope. We've seen it before where teammates or partners on the police force or what have you make a bet on what they can get a criminal to admit or not admit or something like that. And Wonder Woman and Batman make a bet like that. And I don't want to get into the details of it, but it's pretty fun. So I don't know, maybe it's the fact that Wonder Woman is an easier character to write, that these writers are giving us more interesting and diverse stories. But yeah, this is well worth picking up, as opposed to the Superman Red and Blue that they're just wildly inconsistent. But I didn't think there was a bad story in the bunch on these. So anything to add there, Rocky?
I know. I I'm a little bit more hard on it than you. I will say this. This is beautiful. I agree with you on the yellow and the white. It just pops off the page. It looks really fantastic. Uh, it really is. And quite frankly, Wonder Woman deserves this. If Wonder Woman needs this type of attention, the good thing about this is that different incarnations and interpretations of Wonder Woman, I think, are very important. Um, and this gives you that, and it's nice to have this focus. There's I will say that the best story is the one where the Wonder Woman is, when Batman confronts her about, you're so old, how do you know, why would you care if you're immortal, you've lived for thousands of years. That was probably my favorite story. It was also the best drawn. The rest of it here, I thought this was I guess I've seen all these things before, to be honest. But I like the different artistic styles. But again, I would much prefer to have one massive Wonder Woman graphic novel than a series of short excerpts like this. But hey, it's like I said, it's good. A lot of this stuff. I put it in the same category with the Batman and the Superman anthologies. Is that if you just want a snapshot of who this character is, these are absolutely excellent buys. And I think Wonder Woman. This is a long time coming. This is by far the most gorgeous. I think the covers. I hope the spec market picks up some of those covers because, like you said, they're absolutely gorgeous. Some of those covers, and yeah. It's too bad. We just, part of it is that we don't have the time to go through every single story here, but artistically, I mean, these covers are fantastic. And Ramona Fradon, you got me on her. It's nice to see her because she's a famous back in the
Silver
70s,
Age,
right?
yeah. So 60s, Silver Age.
60s?
Yeah.
Silver
She
Age?
did, yeah, extensive work on Aquaman and Plastic Man.
Yeah.
I think she drew the first ever issue of Metamorpho, like his first appearance.
Wow. Yeah.
And she did a long run on Adventure Aquaman when he was in Adventure Comics.
Yeah. No, it's gorgeous.
She's a legend. And yeah, I agree with you. This is a long time coming for Wonder Woman. And so as much as I feel like these sort of limited color palette things need to go away for a while and give them a rest, I am glad that this one is seeing the light of day because Wonder Woman hasn't ever had one of these before. But yeah, and it works a lot better than the Superman one. But, the first issue of the Superman Red and Blue was probably the best. And then they kind of got a little less in quality as they went along. So I just wonder if that's going to happen with Wonder Woman.
My personal wish is that I wish they would do this with the Superman anthologies too. And they do it a little bit with Batman, but I'd like them to write controversial stories about these characters instead of just going so vanilla sky with them and so generic. And don't get me wrong, there's nice tastes, there's some interesting takes, but nothing really. This is where they should be experimenting with more radical interpretations of the characters, in my view. Because I look at what Garth Ennis did with Batman Reptilian. Having a more aggressive interpretation of Batman. Why not have a writer do that in an anthology? Why not have a more aggressive interpretation of Wonder Woman in an anthology, or even Superman? I think an opportunity is lost with these anthologies. They take the easiest way out, and I think it's a missed opportunity. Not to take away from the writers and the work that they've done with these stories, but I would encourage them to maybe think outside the box a little bit.
So you want the Wonder Woman Maxwell Lord sitting in a diner eating pancakes, talking about the fact I snapped your neck story?
Sure, why not? In fact, or even have a story where Wonder Woman has to use lethal force again, or just have her surprise somebody instead of engaging in diplomacy. Using a different tactic. People forget that Wonder Woman. I could go off on a Wonder Woman tangent. I don't want to talk forever, but she's she's got a lot of weapons in her arsenal, and she's and I think that the peaceful warrior, I think there's too much focus on the peace, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, the other part is editorial. They probably want these stories to be pretty accessible, and they probably want to keep them away from that. But I agree with you. If we're talking about, it all depends on who they're trying to target.
Yeah, well, look at Wonder Woman 1984. We have an entire third act where Wonder Woman has no action. She gives a speech at the end in Wonder Woman 1984. Yeah. That's what we're talking about. Corporate won't allow it. When they won't even allow action in a movie, it's whatever. Don't get me started.
All right, you got anything else coming up this week you want to plug before we get out of here?
I might do some individual reviews of some indie comics, and I might do more in-depth lead up review on some of the digital Infinite Frontier digital series that came out in the last 5 or 6 weeks. We've not been reviewing those. I might just put those all together and review those leading into the Infinite Frontier #1 that we reviewed today. So, what about yourself?
Right, well,
what do you got coming up?
I'll just mention the interview I had with Joshua Dysart that came out last Sunday. Bad Idea Takeover. It's the first time Josh has talked about his new upcoming title from Bad Idea, Odin's Eye. Doesn't come out till December, so I'm sure I'll re-release that episode at some point. But you can check it out on YouTube on the Comic Source YouTube channel, or you can listen on any podcast platform. It's very much worth your time. Josh and I chat for over an hour about the story, the themes, inspiration. He goes into a lot of detail on that. Not so much on what we're going to see beyond the first issue, because he wants everybody to be surprised. But it's a great conversation, and as I said, it's an exclusive. It's the first time Josh is talking about the project, and there's also a link in the show notes to a little sort of teaser trailer that he put together on his YouTube channel that shows a bunch of the Tomas Giorello line work for that series, which is absolutely fantastic. So, and I should also have some other interviews coming later this week or next week, but a lot of things still up in the air, still putting the final touches. But I did want to let everybody know about that Joshua Dysart interview, because it's fantastic. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I know we went a little long. There was tons of books to talk about. So we hope you enjoyed it as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later, guys.